Part 18. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 178. A reporter who didn't know the inside story became curious. Asaba Kazuma thought for a moment and revealed some details about Maya. At first, some people just thought that Maya was a rich lady, but after netizens accidentally investigated, someone soon revealed Genji's background. The scene unfolds. Damn it, it's the 21st century now. I actually saw the eldest lady of the Genji family in Japan. Genji? What Genji? The tale of Genji? Isn't that a legendary family? This is the Genji from the tale of Genji. There is evidence from all sources that the background of this young lady who helped Mr. Kazuma can be traced back to Genji. Gigi, this is a joke. To be honest, I have hardly heard of the Genji clan in Japan after the new millennium. Didn't anyone find out about Kaden? The eldest lady of Genji, her last name is Amamiya. What does this mean? Genji fell. No, I heard from my family that this Amamiya Mai was originally the illegitimate daughter of the current head of the Genji family, Minamoto Zayashi. She was later taken back to her family. Because of her outstanding talent, she began to contact the subordinates of the Genji group early on. For the company's business, Amamiya is her mother's surname. It seems that she kept Amamiya's surname in memory of her mother. Good guy, what is the plot in a novel? In the words of Daxia next door, what does this mean? Feng Aotian. I'm the only one who cares about the relationship between our genius supervisor and this young lady? Is there some candy? I have heard of both of these two people. They are both students of Heikuin High School this year. They are my seniors. Before Asaba Senpai's incident, Amamiya Senpai had always occupied the first place in Heikuin High School's grades, but during the joint entrance examination of the four schools last year, Asaba Kazuma single-handedly defeated the other schools and even Amamiya Senpai fell to second place. Huh? Yagiwa. A love story between a young lady and a genius. Good guy, I remember correctly that director Asaba seems to be from an ordinary family. Well, that's why I said, director Asaha's talent is really something that even the eldest lady can't stop, right? The internet was abuzz for a while. Asaha Kazuma is indeed a good player, and the hype is one after another. Japan's social media software is beyond their control to a certain extent, or to be more precise, except for that piece of land that can be slightly suppressed. Basically the world's public opinion propaganda has been hijacked by the Ami circle. Just take a look at some of the most popular social media software currently used in Japan. Bluebird is from America, TikTok is from Daxia, and Link is from Zioxaba. You can see how leaky the network there is. It's funny to say that after the advent of the internet era, the once arrogant major families in Japan have become more restrained. It is rare to hear signs of their activities in the market. This is largely because of the internet era. Japan has fallen behind. A step behind is a step behind. Even Genji has no way to control the current world's media tycoons. He can only watch these news spread around the world like snowflakes. You know, even in Europe, which is full of small countries, the big and small things of the princesses and young ladies have been ridiculed several times by netizens. In the eyes of many people, Genji is more like a legendary figure than a famous family in the island country. Unlike some people who hold up nerve and say that this is the promised land of God, the descendants of Genji recorded in the tale of Genji appear in front of the public. This feeling is really different. But no matter what, with this east wind, Amamiya Mai became a little popular on the platform. But soon, more people turned their attention to the protagonist Asaha Kazuma. Being able to get the support of Genji, Asaba Kazuma's family, which does not need to be mentioned at all, has become the basis for proving his genius. What kind of genius is it that can be won over by Genji like this? You don't know unless you investigate. Once investigated, this young man, who had a great reputation before, but was still limited to the two-dimensional circle, shocked many people's jaws. The Prince of Tennis, the current top manga in Weekly Shonen Jump, is his famous work. Nowadays, it has become the leading manga driving the steady increase in Jump sales. Now it is said that Shueisha is considering whether to cooperate with animation studio to produce the Prince of Tennis animation. According to people in the industry, the IP Prince of Tennis is indeed very popular, and related peripherals are already unbeatable in major markets. However, when it comes to animation adaptation, Shueisha seems to be hesitant internally, and the willingness of various companies to compete is also somewhat weak. The reason is that the painting style and eye-catching ability of the Prince of Tennis far exceed that of ordinary comics. Even in the eyes of many comic fans, the Prince of Tennis is the highest work of art since the birth of Japanese comics. This evaluation does not refer to the plot, but only to Yukiya Kazuma's unscrupulous talent when creating the Prince of Tennis. Condensed on pages, many people can't breathe. Adapted into animation? It's great to be able to grab this IP, but there's no problem even if you can't. After all, it is really difficult to adapt, and it may even be criticized wildly by fans of the original work after adaptation. When the time comes, people will take out the comics and point fingers at the animation supervisors, saying that they are just a bunch of useless people, and all the major supervisors are considered minor celebrities. Who is willing to take this risk to adapt such a comic? It would be better to. It was directly handed over to the hands of Isaba Kazuma, who created this manga and now managed to become a famous director in less than half a year. Once this outrageous situation was revealed, the public was immediately in an uproar. This kind of outrageous thing has never happened before in the performance industry, but some people learned more about it and suddenly felt that they could understand those famous supervisors again. If we talk about the quality of Isaba Kazuma's Prince of Tennis at the beginning, the supervisors tried their best and had a chance to catch up, then after just over a month of serialization, the quality of the content of Prince of Tennis has already been improved. A height that is almost beyond their reach. Anyone who has written online articles knows that for online article authors who have to constantly create new content every day, inspiration always comes unexpectedly, so many times after updating, the author will think that the published content is actually more interesting. Perfect for new inspiration. But when they wanted to rebuild, it was too late. The same is true for cartoonists. Due to the problem of cartoon carriers, most cartoonists have more inspirations during the creation process, but they have no way to correct them in time. But Isaba Kazuma was different. He had already revised Prince of Tennis twice in Rena simulation, and he even knew enough about the past life it was referring to. In other words, this revision of the Prince of Tennis is already the fourth time he has revised it. Not everyone is like Jiangnan, the more he corrects an old book, the worse it gets. Isaba Kazuma has revised it now, and the entire online article has become a set of rigorous and orderly comic logic, as well as batch after batch of vivid and attractive story content. But now it's still not enough. Isaba Kazuma was still speeding up. Heian's talent Hongwen Kyangji allows him to refresh the upper limit every time he grows, and Mai's talent overclocking mode that he has poured into his body allows him to forcefully break through the limit every time he pauses. Time after time, Kinya Kazuma has really become a ghost. Only those who are really close to him can feel the almost suffocating pressure. But forget it, after all, outsiders still don't know to what extent Isaba Kazuma has evolved. Whether it's comics or animation, there's a time lag between having the inspiration and handing over the answer sheet to the audience. Isaba Kazuma saved a lot of manuscripts for The Prince of Tennis because he was working on the animation like crazy, and he only recently started using it. Soon fellow cartoonists will feel the true impact of dimensionality reduction from him. But there are more ways for the outside world to feel Isaba Kazuma's domineering attitude. Soon after the news about Amamiya emerged, Isaba Kazuma caused an uproar in the academic circle. This time, Even his achievements in the academic circle began to seem a little out of the ordinary. Asahi Kazuma stopped pretending. He and Heian immediately began to work hard, and one after another papers that gained recognition in major top journals continued to appear. In a short period of time, it even led to a rise in biomedical-related stock market prices. Asahi Kazuma and Shiina Yuine both have memories of previous simulations, and they know very well what kind of papers can be broken down in more detail. In the previous simulation process of Heian, Kinya Kazuma was dying because his life was in danger. Neither he nor Heian had any intention to write academic papers like Zhongfeng on the other side of the sea. Basically, they are distributed in a centralized manner only after sufficient significant stage results have been achieved. This way, the gold content is high, but the number of high-quality papers will be much smaller. Many of the additional achievements were branched out after Heian encountered bottlenecks in its development and reviewed previous research. However, compared with the forefront of scientific research at that time, those methods were already far behind, and they could not cause a sensation at the time. But if those branches are compared to today's era, they would be considered a major technological breakthrough. After Asahi Kazuma and Shiina Kane discussed it, they decided to adopt this unreasonable method to focus the world's attention on this. If the boss and famous supervisor of the animation studio can be regarded as an introduction that attracts the attention of the melon eaters, then Asahi Kazuma easily received the special invitation letter from the University of Tokyo in his sophomore year of high school, and that was the spark that set off the introduction. When his related theories blossomed in various fields, the world's attention focused on him, and the number of colleagues who began to invite him to cooperate has far exceeded the size of Japan. It was at this moment that Asahi Kazuma, who had been investigating the internal changes in Genji, suddenly received an unfamiliar call. On the other end of the phone was Mai Amamiya. "Hey, it's me." When Amamiya Mai's greeting sounded, Asahi Kazuma chuckled, "It's not easy to talk to a partner like you." Amamiya Mai was silent for a moment, and finally said quietly, "Is it worth it? Now you are in more trouble than I imagined, just to help me." "It's no trouble. Once you get out of trouble, I'll leave these troublesome matters directly to you to deal with. Are you okay with that?" There was silence on the other end of the phone. Asahi Kazuma felt a little numb and cursed, "No, you are a dog. Do you know how much effort I have spent to arouse Genji's fear? Now I am almost being treated as a mascot by all parties. If you don't handle it, I will be annoyed to death. Besides, how can you not handle it? I have already let the outside world know that you are my business partner and want to have business talks with us. I'll go directly to you. I can't compete with you, Genji, but looking beyond Japan, there are many forces in the world that can calm Genji. If you don't talk to them on my behalf, how can you make Genji surrender?" As if realizing that he was a little anxious, Qian Yufengjian took a deep breath and finally said, "So, partner, do you want to take the blame for me?" A moment later, Amamiya Mai's chuckle came from the other end of the phone, "Didn't you say that you are always on the right path? Why do you want me to take the blame for you now?" Kinya Kazuma said calmly, "If it weren't for the purpose of seeing what's going on with you, I could be more correct, so just tell me whether you want to help me or not. There are many people who are willing to help you handle these things. I'm really grateful that you can help me like this." Amamiya Mai's serious reply came from the other end of the phone. Suddenly, she laughed out loud again, then next, "Happy working together. When can we meet?" "We'll meet soon, Minamoto's AI has spoken," Amamiya Mai said with a smile. Qian Yufengjian pondered for a moment and said in a low voice, "I am afraid that I would like to trouble you to inquire about some information from within the Genji family. I have investigated some very interesting things about your old head of the Genji family. Well, it seems that there are some people who are willing to see it happen and are pushing the situation behind the scenes. We will discuss the details later when we meet." After finishing speaking, Asaba Kazuma hung up the phone and found an anonymous email in his work mailbox. Looking at the relevant news in the email above, he fell into deep thought. Dear Mr. Kinyu, forgive me for using such an obscure way to communicate with you for the first time. Recently, we have noticed that you are exploring some of the secrets of Genji in the last century. This involves some of the privacy of the old family leader who has now abdicated. There are dangerous things hidden behind it. Someone knows. If you are afraid of death, then I suggest that you stop learning about the relevant secrets for now. If you still choose to take this step bravely, then cooperate with the princess of Genji who does not have the blood of Genji. Many of the secrets you want to know can be obtained from Genji's old clan. But there is a place only those approved by Genji can go. Of course, if you use the most arrogant means to trample the traditional values of the Genji, Miss Amamiya Mai will also get the opportunity to enter. These are the only ways you can get specific information. At the end of the email, the geographical location of the old Minamoto clan was attached. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 179. Asayu Kazuma frowned. He also learned some hacking techniques and tried to investigate the source, but gave up soon. The person who sent the message was very cautious. The account Asaba Kazuma found was the account of an 80-year-old grandmother in America. If she continued to dig deeper, she might not be able to find the person. He rubbed his brows, feeling as if he had been inadvertently drawn into a huge whirlpool. Tomoko Amamiya's unmarried child. Tomoko Amamiya adopts Mai Amamiya. Amamiya Mai was brought to Genji by Minamoto Zayashi. The two final products of the Shenzi project were noticed by the original head of the Genji family. The collaboration between the family behind Minamoto Mayami and the Genji Mai Amamiya is controlled by Genji. Plus this unknown email. It was as if a pair of big hands were merging seemingly unrelated things together. I'm afraid he will have to wait until he formally meets with Amamiya Mai to discuss this matter in detail. Not long after, Asaba Kazuma met Amamiya Mai sitting in the back row of the classroom when she was at school. Chien Kazuma was stunned for a moment. You are finally released from prison. Amamiya Mai's face was originally full of smiles, but after hearing these words, her expression darkened and she kicked Asaba Kazuma. It's quite unlucky. What does it mean to be released from prison? It's just that your personal freedom has been restricted by Genji. That's no different than going to jail. That's enough for you. I finally came out, but I didn't come out just to listen to you mocking me. But as they talked, the expressions on their faces didn't look so tense. In the end, Asaba Kazuma smiled and said, anyway, congratulations. This time, forget it, saying thank you so much makes me feel a little sick. Let's talk after class later. Asaba Kazuma nodded. Some students who came earlier carefully looked at the two people talking in the back row. Their whispered conversation could be vaguely heard. How good is the relationship between Kinyu-san and that eldest lady? Ask me how I know. But the relationship is definitely better than with us, otherwise he wouldn't have given strong support to Chien-Yu's company. Now that his company has been able to expand to such a rapid extent, it has a lot to do with the eldest lady. Hey, what you said is that if you know more about Asayu Kazuma's development trajectory, you will also know that the help she gave from the eldest lady only slightly accelerated the rise of Asayu Kazuma. As for our classmate, to put it mildly, I'm afraid that when we get older, he will become something we and our children can brag about. Is it that exaggerated? Isn't it just an animation company? When you and I inherit the family business, the size of the animation company will be just like that. For it. Did I said wrong thing? Have you become ambitious recently and not kept up to date with current affairs as required by your family? Yes, a little bit, not much. The animation studio is not the focus is his current achievements in the field of scientific research. I heard news here that the University of Tokyo plans to let him take classes for a symbolic half semester, and then directly give him an honorary associate professor's position. Location. His. Understood, although those researchers often don't show up in public, their hidden influence is much stronger than that of your company. I can only say that the young lady really dares to invest. Asahi Kazuma shook his head. He felt that if the current situation continued, he might never be able to live without other people's subtle looks and heated whispers in his school life. No wonder once someone escapes poverty and becomes rich, many times he can no longer chat with his original friends. As for the current situation in the classroom, they are still a group of students, but they lack the vigor and fearlessness of students. This would be even worse if it were an adult. Amamaya sat in her seat with a smile and said calmly, "Now do you know why I don't come to school more often? For people who are far beyond the scope of ordinary people's understanding, we are actually aliens. Sitting here, they are uncomfortable, and we are even more uncomfortable. Do you want me to recommend my tutor to you? My tutors are pretty good, and my grades have been better than theirs in the past few years, and it's not just because I'm smart." Asayu Kazuma rolled his eyes. "Are you suppressing me? Who am I suppressing? Why didn't I know that you are stronger than me now?" Amamaya was not angry either. Perhaps she was able to successfully escape from the confinement of her family. She was in a particularly good mood today. She held her chin in her hand and tilted her head and said, "At noon, let's find a quiet corner to have a chat." "Okay, where to go?" "The rooftop. You still remember how I tricked you back then?" "Tisk, I mean this literally. There are really few people on the rooftop, so it's suitable for discussing issues. But it's also suitable for others to observe. I don't want all the secrets to be leaked during our rare communication." Kinya Kazuma thought for a moment. Is this guy hinting at something? Could it be that Genji is still secretly monitoring her movements? But since she said that, just to be on the safe side, Asahi Kazuma directly agreed to her request. Soon it was noon. Yuin has already gone to Tokyo University in advance, and Asahi Kazuma has nothing to do with lunch. Recently, he basically eats in the cafeteria, or occasionally eats the bento that Rina made for him when he got up early. "Wait a minute, I'll go to the cafeteria to buy something first." As soon as Asahi Kazuma finished speaking, Amamaya burst into laughter. "Okay, just find a place and tell me, you don't need to think about lunch." As soon as the two of them went out, Asahi Kazuma saw the female bodyguard who had been protecting Amamaya. She directly handed over a huge lunch box and said, "Miss, it's ready for you." Asahi Kazuma glanced at him and said nothing, but Amamaya glanced at him and said, "Don't worry, there's enough for you." Kinya Kazuma curled his lips. As far as the amount of food in Japan is concerned, it's really just a lot of food, and it's not that healthy. As for Rina and Yuin, the food cooked by Rina has actually gradually changed from Japanese cuisine to Chinese cuisine with a more smoky flavor. If conditions permit, Yuin will also make some home-cooked dishes such as stir-fried shredded pork with green pepper. So after the period of novelty, he really has no interest in the eldest lady's bento. They quickly found an empty classroom and ate and chatted there. "Did you cook the food yourself?" Chienyu Kazuma asked. Amamaya pursed her lips. "What are you thinking about? I don't have so much time." "Not sincere, the taste is just okay, lower than my expectations. A chef like you hired by Genji will come to you with a knife to settle the score." "Okay, let's not worry about this for now. I just have something to ask you. What is your situation with Genji? Why did you lose contact all of a sudden?" When Amamaya heard what he said, her face suddenly turned dark, but she still explained, "I'm not angry mainly because of you, but I didn't expect that I was tricked by Minamoto Yum." "How to say? Have you ever heard of the Hato Yama family?" I seem to have heard that there are people like this in office in Japan now, right? Amamiya nodded and said, Minamoto's mother is from the Hatoyama family. It can be said that the marriage between Minamoto Zayashi and that woman is essentially a mutual cooperation between the Genji family and the Hatoyama family. Well, it makes sense. After all, it's Japan, so the people from the Hatoyama family found something about you and put you in jail. Amamiya shook her head. I was blocked by the Hatoyama lineage in a cross-G acquisition case. I originally thought that the willful young lady wanted to hinder my plan, but I didn't expect that this bastard actually caught some non-compliance on my company, and, those things I told you about before. This matter was known to Genzei, and it seemed that even the old family master had heard about it, so he was basically punished for several crimes and was imprisoned in Genji without being released. What will happen if we go out? With their ability, even though it is a small matter, as long as they handle it a little bit, they can put a big label on me and send me to prison for reasonable and legal reasons. Tisk, why are you so careless? It's not like you were just taking notes when you were idle, and others found out about you, right? Of course Asaba Kazuma knew that Amamiya wouldn't be so careless, but that didn't stop him from being arrogant about Amamiya. Amamiya sighed and said, if it's because of my own carelessness, forget it, then I admit defeat, mainly because I didn't expect that I would be under the supervision of Minamoto Shinzuru from the beginning. In other words, I had no cover from her side from the beginning to the end. Asaba Kazuma, betrayed by the people around you? Or installed a hidden camera? Amamiya, no, it's about adjusting the genetic talent. I didn't find out about it until later. Chienu Kazuma, Can adjusting genetic talents be linked to monitoring? This is not genetic at all. Don't put all the weird abilities into your genes. I don't know what her specific talent is, but there are some secrets that can no longer be discovered through surveillance or betrayal. It feels more like... Well, it's almost like you are witnessing from my perspective. It feels like I'm seeing another you. Asahi Kazuma's smile slowly disappeared, and a thoughtful look came to her heart. This is quite interesting. Amamiya added, however, I also discovered a problem with her talent. After she used that unknown monitoring method, she continued to monitor me for 5 days at most. If you don't see me again after that, I'm afraid the monitoring method will be ineffective. If she hadn't been stuck in a time lag before, when you locked me in the basement for such and such a time, she directly lost the transparency of my information. I'm afraid she would have broken down the door with her family members at the time when I was frequently showing ugly behavior. And enter. I'll be done with it then, and I'm afraid you'll have to count frogs in jail too. I think it's okay, Asaba Kazuma said seriously, although you were quite stupid back in the basement, it's definitely not ugly. As he spoke, he chuckled, at least I was quite satisfied at that time. Then he received a kick that was neither gentle nor serious. Amamiya was embarrassed and annoyed. This person was really, why would he bring up such a stupid thing when he was so serious? Asaba Kazuma, so you couldn't come to meet me right away just to guard against her weird surveillance ability? Amamiya, what else? Asaba Kazuma, I actually have a better way, but I don't know if you dare. Amamiya, well, tell me. Her ability makes it difficult for me to sleep and eat well. Do you have a chance to control her directly? Chienu Kazuma said seriously. Amamiya's expression changed instantly. Do you want to use the same method you did to me on her? How is that possible? It was an accident that time, Asaba Kazuma said with a smile. I hope you can directly take a tube of Minamoto Shinjin's blood. I will use her blood to prepare the genetic adjustment medicine. Amamiya, Asaba Kazuma, to put it simply, just take her adjuster talent as my own. This way, I can figure out her hidden talent cards. Amamiya looked Asaba Kazuma up and down, her expression a little complicated. I remember I was imprisoned at home not long ago, right? Your technology has improved to this extent. Checking is not just about progress. Asaba Kazuma handed a glass tube to Amamiyamai. I gave it to you. It is a genetic adjustment reagent prepared with your blood. Although you can't absorb more like me. Genes, but this reagent can make your talents perform better. Amamiyamai. She didn't know what to say for a moment. Just a little touched. But she really couldn't say anything to the bastard Asahi Kazuma. Then she heard Asaba Kazuma's words, intravenous injection, yes 3 million yen, remember to transfer. The good expression that appeared just now turned dark again. She shouldn't expect too much from this guy. She said angrily, I know, will I transfer to your company? No, transfer it to my personal account. Remember, after tax, I will use this money. Amamiyamai nodded, looked at the reagent quietly, and suddenly said, you can transform it into your talent by mixing her own genetic adjustment reagent, right? Chien Kazuma, well, what's wrong? Amamiyamai, I'll find a way to get her blood. How many doses will it take? Asaba Kazuma, about 70 ml is enough. What do you want to do? Amamiyamai, although you said that this reagent cannot be used on me, if it is used on her, it can also strengthen her talent and make it easier for her to use her talent freely, right? Chien Kazuma, yes. Amamiyamai, I'll get you double. Asahi Kazuma instantly understood what this guy meant. Are you going to use genetic adjustment reagents to make a deal with her? You haven't given up yet. Amamiyamai said calmly, she has been in a wheelchair for many years, and her emotions will become more and more extreme. Now that I can't help it, it will only become more extreme. But if I tell her now and give her a chance to stand up, I think I can get enough rewards from her. She looked at Asaba Kazuma, with undisguised ambition flashing in her eyes. It's so rich that I might really swallow Genji's reward. Kinyu Fengjian thought for a moment and suddenly clapped his hands. Okay, but don't fill yourself in again. Crow's mouth. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 180. Besides this matter, I would like to tell you about some news that I have investigated during this period. Asaba Kazuma thought for a moment, organized his words, and then opened his mouth and said to Amamiyamai. Have you heard the story of Princess Kaguya? Amamiyamai rolled her eyes. In Japan, it would be difficult to find someone who has never heard the story of Princess Kaguya. Chien Yufengma nodded. Princess Kaguya is a character in The Tale of Bamboo. In the island country, she is a masterpiece similar to The Tale of Genji, so naturally many people know about her. He continued, the Genji originates from The Tale of Genji and is considered one of the oldest families in Japan. However, many years ago, when the previous generation of family heads inherited the Genji family was on the verge of collapse. When the old family took over Genji had almost lost its core business. Japan is a country that smells stale from top to bottom. Under normal circumstances, their internal methods of selecting and employing people are almost solidified. The tradition of passing down from father to son can be said to be so deeply ingrained in this land that it is almost difficult to break through. So much so that you can understand the Japanese congressman at a glance. You will find the same group of people coming and going. It can be said that it is still very difficult for famous families to collapse in this land. But just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. Genji encountered a similar situation back then. What Asaba Kazuma and Amamiyamai were talking about was some information that was extremely taboo within the Genji family. That was over 50 years ago. At that time, the head of the Genji family, Minamoto Hidenori, was still a young man who had just inherited the foundation of the Genji family, and he thought about flexing his muscles in Japan. However, Japan was in its most severe period at that time. Those years were the most serious times when mold was the king of this land. The iron fist from America across the sea made Japan tremble at that time, and the trauma left by Hiroshima love made the whole world applaud. As the so-called craziest era, let alone the Genji where Minamoto Hidenori lives, even if you say you are Yamata no Orakai, you can't stop others from being malicious towards you. In the face of an existential crisis, Genji encountered an internal and external alliance. The Black Hand. For a time, the flow of funds was cut off, the mansion was robbed, and even Minamoto Hidenori himself almost died. Later, Minamoto Hidenori quietly abandoned many people and disappeared for several years. When he reappeared, he had reorganized his subordinates and successfully packed the rebel branch families with cement and threw them into Tokyo Bay. Later, Minamoto Hidenori didn't know where he got a financial support. He quickly relied on Genji's original prestige to regain part of the industry, and then developed rapidly. He even had a stronger foundation and a better foundation than when he first took over Genji. Too much. The elders of that generation gave him the name Wise Fox, thinking that he was extremely smart and cunning like a fox. It is said that the old family owner had a bad reputation back then, but it was of no use. Musk's partners even called Musk a madman and a bastard, but that didn't stop them from making money every day. It was under such circumstances that Genji developed at an unprecedented speed. No one knew what the old head of the family, Genshidori, did back then, and where the unknown source of funds came from. I only know that when Genji developed into the last century, and the energy in the traditional industry had reached its peak, the old head of Genji, who had not yet retired at that time, directly and decisively asked Genji to change the development of the industry. The original automobile manufacturing, real estate, energy, and chemical industries were slowly sold off or exchanged interests, and the focus of development was placed on an industry that although many people in Japan had previously paid attention to, few giants had invested heavily. Biology. In the past, this thing was more of a privilege for those countries in the West. Although Japan has been catching up with the industry's top leaders in recent years and has been catching up with the industry, it is like the other side of the sea. The situation is still very different. It was under such circumstances that Genji plunged into this deep pit. Especially the real estate industry back then, which can be said to be one of Genji's core cash flows, did not know how much of a rebound it caused within Genji after being sold off on a large scale. Although the authority of the head of the Genji family is very important, the core that holds all the Genji together is the family's interests. Minamoto Hidenori had shaken the interests of many people in the Minamoto family at that time, so much so that there was also impeachment within the family. But Minamoto Hidenori carried out his plan regardless, with a certain aura that those who obeyed would prosper and those who resisted would perish. In the end, the criticism within the family weakened. It wasn't that he was afraid of Minamoto Hidenori, but that Minamoto Hideori directly used off-the-chart moves and began to endanger the lives of those who opposed and their families, as if they were going to die together. Genji finally developed again. Some poor old guys in the past also benefited from the development of Genji. How could they be willing to gamble with their lives on this matter? In this case, Genji's strategy took a U-turn, shocking countless famous families. You want to know how far Tokyo's real estate has developed in the last century? This madness has caused various real estate companies to explode with cash flow. Genji wanted to withdraw from this industry, and there were countless families and financial groups who wanted to directly take over this piece of cake from him, so of course they cashed out a considerable amount of liquid cash. At this time, the signing of the Plaza Accord brought Japan's rapid development to a halt. The lost decade? No, it is the lost 20 or 30 years, I am afraid there will be another 40 or 50 years. Betting on the fate of the country? If you dare to bet, then dare to die. This time, no one can support Japan. It didn't take long for the tide of the times to overwhelm everyone. No matter what famous family you are, they will all fall apart in the face of the real general trend. The funny thing is that Genji, who had withdrawn a large amount of cash at that time, did not suffer much impact because the capital was flowing out of the Japanese circle. Even after the funds returned, he even bought many of the family's deep-rooted assets. After a wave of prejudgments, there was no longer any opposition to the old patriarch within Genji. This situation continues to this day and is deeply affecting Genji. When Asaba Kazuma said this, Amamiyamai was a little confused. These things you mentioned have been heard in the Genji family. What does it have to do with Princess Kaguya? Asaba Kazuma shook his head and said, until now, it really has nothing to do with Princess Kaguya, but it will matter from now on. Well, tell me. Asaba Kazuma began to tell some stories that Amamiyamai had never heard before. That story happens to be something that no one within the Genji family knows about, something that happened in the years after Minamoto Hidenori disappeared. Under normal circumstances, the secrets of the old head of the Genji family would be easy to investigate. These matters should have been investigated internally by the Genji family long ago. After all, people within the Genji family are also very curious about what the old patriarch did back then, who he got the help from, and where the liquidity came from. The old patriarch has never told anyone else about this kind of secret conversation about getting rich, which shows that he is eager to hide the news. Now it seems that he hid it really well, until Asaba Kazuma added money. Asaba Kazuma's partner is a private detective who has been working in the industry for a long time. This man regards wealth as his life, quite similar to the character of the male protagonist in The Winner is Justice that he watched in his previous life. After receiving Asaba Kazuma's excuse for adding money, he began to intensify his investigation. For example, it is not easy to sort out the development of Genji over the past few decades. It is necessary to find people who know the information and then extract the scattered information from them. Even if he wanted to know what he had experienced in the years when Minamoto Hideori disappeared, he didn't have the ability to do it. It was purely a coincidence that he knew this. The grandfather of the private detective used to be a member of the Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department, and he was still engaged in serious case work. As a qualified witness, he has amazing eyesight and memory for the appearance of criminals. After the private detective could no longer find out the relevant information, he returned home, extremely regretful that he had missed another opportunity to make money. It happened that my grandfather, who was already very old at that time, was tired of retiring in the countryside and came to Tokyo to see his son, daughter-in-law, and grandson Hohoku. As a result, when he was bending over to help the detective grandson organize the documents on his desk, a photo of Hideno Minamoto in his youth appeared on the table. Caught his attention. The old superintendent had seen this man. After hearing the news from his grandfather, the private detective was also shocked. Because his grandfather told him that the man in the photo at that time had been reduced to begging on the street. Every time he begged with others, he would madly tell others that as long as he gave him enough money, he would tell others a secret about something. The secret of the ancient goddess Kaguya. Are you sure it's not the private detective who is deceiving you? When Asaba Kazuma talked about the news, Amamiyamai's expression was a bit dumbfounded. Although there are such outrageous things as adjusting genes in this world, let's forget about myths and legends. It's a bit nonsense. But when she saw Qian Yufengjian's unwavering expression, she felt a little frozen for a moment. She knew that Asaba Kazuma was not a fool, there must be a reason for him to say this, and she believed that this matter might be true. The private detective's grandfather once rescued the head of the Genji family who was still alive out of kindness. My partner never lags behind in making money. He quickly changed his mind and followed the path of his grandfather, investigating the behind-the-scenes information about his grandfather's rapid promotion in the Metropolitan Police in the years when he was approaching retirement. This was easier than directly investigating the past decades ago. I quickly learned through my grandfather's former boss that his grandfather had received special treatment from a prominent family, and finally confirmed that that noble family. Don't tell me it's Genji. Amamiyamai's mouth twitched slightly. Asaba Kazuma nodded, and continued, after confirming this news, the detective can basically confirm that the madman his grandfather met and rescued back then is indeed the old head of Genji. However, because the famous families rarely have direct contact with ordinary people and do not specifically search for relevant information, even the detective's grandfather has almost no chance of meeting Minamoto Hideyori again. But what really shocked me was the relevant news I investigated next. Qian Yufengzi continued. Now that the private detective has confirmed that the wandering beggar was Gen Hideyori himself, there is no need to continue investigating the relevant intelligence along Genji's information. He changed his mind and went directly to the Jedao where Yuan Xiudian had been begging, and looked for information from the old people who had never changed their place of residence. Those people had no impression of Minamoto Hideyori at all, but when it came to the beggar who exchanged the secrets of the goddess Kaguya for wealth, some people still had an impression. After all, crazy beggars can still attract more people's attention than normal beggars. During some exploration, the private detective made another progress with an old woman. The old lady looked at Yuan Xiudian's pity and had just given the beggar some extra food. Perhaps for this reason, the beggar would occasionally chat with the young woman about some strange things when he was not so hungry. Matter. At that time, Minamoto Hideyori told the story of the goddess to this kind old man, and then said a little nervously that the goddess had returned to the land of Japan after 1,000 years and left here again. At that time, the young old woman only thought what Minamoto Hideyori said was a joke, until one day later, the nervous beggar disappeared. It is said that the beggar received funding from a wealthy local family. It didn't take long for both the beggars and the rich to leave the city, disappearing into history just like the thousands of passers-by. According to what the old lady said, the wealthy man seemed to have invested in the steel factory in the city before. With this news, the private detective searched for relevant information about the former investors of the nearby steel plant. Non-local rich people invested in steel plants and later left the city directly. The private detective followed this clue and finally locked in a list of only a few people, and then he could no longer trace it. Asaba Kazuma printed the list on paper. There were only a few people in total. Amamiyamai glanced at the first few people and knew that most of them seemed to have no connection with Genji. Until she saw a familiar last name, her eyes narrowed and she said in surprise, "Hato Yamakotaro." Asaba Kazuma nodded and said seriously, "It's interesting, isn't it? Most of this group of people should have nothing to do with you Genji, except for this Hato Yamakotaro. Or to be more precise, Kotaro Hatoyama had absolutely nothing to do with Genji before. Even Hatoyama Kotaro has never seen Minamoto Hideyori in his life. The wealthy businessman died of illness more than 20 years ago. But Kotaro Hatoyama has a son named Iaki Hatoyama. Iaki Hatoyama had a daughter named Mayako Hatoyama. Mayako Hatoyama is now married and has taken her husband's surname, Mayako Minamoto. Minamoto Mayako and her husband Minamoto Zayashi gave birth to a daughter named Minamoto Mizuru. A shady story that spanned decades involved two seemingly unrelated families. In the eyes of the outside world, the Genji family has considerable influence in all parties, and the Hatoyama family is a frequent visitor to the Japanese parliament. Is the combination of the two more like a marriage? But now it seems that there may be some things hidden in this that Asahi Kazuma doesn't know about. We've traveled through Tokyo. Who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 181. Interestingly, Representative Hatoyama's daughter married Minamoto Zayashi back then. It is said that it caused quite a stir. Hatoyama's foundation in the parliament is not as stable as that of the oldest families. At that time, some people believed that this was Hatoyama's attempt to use Genji's energy to expand his voice, Now it seems that it may be the other way around. Amamayamai was thoughtful and then said, is there any other information? Qian Yufengjian thought for a moment, and finally said, I received an email from an anonymous person before, saying that the old head of the Genji clan has hidden the real secret in the old clan land, but I don't know who sent it. I'm worried it's a scam. Old clan land? I can indeed provide some intelligence support here, however, the secret may not be that easy to find out, and the source of the information may not be trustworthy. How to deal with it? Then let's play something without martial ethics. Amamayamai smiled and said, just like you did without martial ethics at that time. Asayu Kazuma's face darkened, that's all the result of not thinking clearly before. Are you comfortable? Amamayamai said with a smile. Qian Yufengjian snorted, it's not bad, it can be regarded as leaving memories. Unfortunately, you are really a weakling. It's really unfulfilling to play this with you. Amamayamai smiled and said, who did you feel a sense of accomplishment playing with? Or was it more than one? Kinyo Kazuma coughed, okay, the topic is wrong. What do you want to do? Why don't you follow martial arts ethics? Seeing Asaba Kazuma change the topic, Amamayamai sighed in her heart and continued. In fact, there are not many people left to guard the Genji clan's land there, and the location of the old clan's land is also quite remote. Since our purpose is just to understand the truth behind Genji and the local old guys coveting us, let's just arrange for reliable people to attack. Here in Japan, it is not that easy to play espionage, but it is not difficult. The two looked at each other and smiled, and quickly settled the matter. You and Amamayamai have discussed the action plan, and Amamayamai starts to find people through secret channels to prepare for the attack on the old Minamoto clan. At the same time, on the outside, Amamayamai is also busy. Your research has almost achieved some initial results, and products that can be popularized will also be produced. According to Amamaya's wishes, you established a patent operating company overseas to be responsible for the patent operations and licensing of you and Kian's subordinates. At the same time, Animation Studio successfully completed the divestiture of patents, and various animation and music patents were transferred to the new company. In the same month, FI's Entertainment reached an internal consensus and introduced new shareholder Chianyu Kazuma as a partner because FI's Entertainment discovered a very cruel problem. After players have enjoyed the aesthetics from Chianyu Kazuma, it becomes increasingly difficult to accept the company other people's aesthetics. They are not those big capitals that cover the entire Japanese circle and can forcibly downgrade consumption in the entire Japanese circle. Having understood that Asahi Kazuma is indispensable to the current FI's Entertainment, they have no obvious resistance. Life is not just about fighting and killing. Instead, they are looking forward to what Asahi Kazuma brings, other invisible benefits. FI's Entertainment has approved 2 plans internally, and wants to add some more evil DLCs. The founder vowed to come to you and tell you that SLG games cannot be without SE, just like the West cannot lose YLSL. He wants a DLC with the entire sister as the heroine, and I hope you can give him some advice. You hesitated for a moment and slowly pushed out a copy. The founder was overjoyed and stepped forward to take a look, and the 3 characters Yuanzakan were printed in his eyes. He slowly opened the plan written by you, not knowing that the sinful future was about to unfold in his hands. Qian Yufengma took a breath of cold air. Stop it, my other self, you're going to cause big trouble. What, I'm still the main artist of FI's Entertainment. Doesn't this mean that a decent young man like me should be asked to draw a book? Angry. Are you kidding, Gu? Why not kill me? However, after the scene unfolded, you took a deep breath. Takagi, the founder of FI's Entertainment, shamelessly hugged his thighs and howled loudly. Mr. Kinyu, you are the anchor of our FI's Entertainment, responsible for aesthetics. FI's Entertainment cannot live without you, just like the West cannot live without you. Stop, Mr. Takagi, there are a group of guys on the other side of the sea who are holding nervous, that's right, and preaching it every day, for fear that others will think they are not neurotic. This metaphor is unlucky. Takagi Ichiri was stunned for a moment, and then continued to howl, "Mr. Kinyu, Faishi Entertainment can't live without you, just like the 3D area can't live without Tifa. The main beauty and copywriting of the book The Sky of Fate really need more, please bother me." Asahi Kazuma's face turned dark. "Do you want me to make all the music for you?" Takagi Ichiri was stunned for a moment, then nodded like crazy, okay, I'll leave it to you if you want. I've read Fader and the music in it is really good. Asahi Kazuma. He vaguely remembered that when he first got involved with Faishi Entertainment, the founder was still an extremely aloof and technical geek. How come it had become what it is now in such a short period of time? But should I say it or not? He remembered that the music in the and no Sara game and anime were quite good. Flying to the distant sky. Memory. Feathers of flying wings. Old memory. Silent night. It's not too late. The end of the road, beyond the sky. It can be said that it is not without reason that whether it is the original game or the later animation with extremely poor picture quality, it was able to break the circle that year and even left the famous meme Battle of the Entrance. Asahi Kazuma still remembers a certain big up owner under Shushu who claimed to give the anime area a few years in his previous life. He once mocked that it can be very popular even with good enough music for New Oriental's recruitment advertisements. He used this as an example. The popularity of XX animation has nothing to do with the content. Saying this is a bit ridiculous. After all, the movie watching experience and viewing experience are the result of comprehensive consideration of all aspects. Excluding the parts for which a work is famous is excluded, and then saying that the remaining content is not worth mentioning is used to support the entire work. Not worth mentioning. So as long as you exclude enough good parts, all that's left of any masterpiece is just dross. Therefore, regardless of the controversial content in The Sky of Fate, its overall storytelling and music were among the better ones back then. It is human nature to look for the plot in The Emperor's Uncle, and to look for the story in the text. It is precisely because of this that the thousands of cultural creations in this world are so rich and wonderful. As he was thinking about it, he suddenly became a little lost in thought. But he soon came back to his senses and looked at Takagi Ichiri. "Chairman Takagi, I am a serious person and have a good reputation outside. I don't want to be misunderstood by others because of this kind of thing. It's simple. To the outside world, I just say that our Faishi Entertainment wants to get the support of Mr. Qianyu, so we knelt down at the animation studio to get the project. At the same time, we declare to the outside world that Fai's Entertainment has bet on the future. Anyway, that's exactly what happened. After all, SLG has its limits, and we still hope to earn a little more. In order to make money, do you even give up your own moral integrity?" Asahi Kazuma was shocked. "Chairman Takagi, where are your moral integrity? They are all gone. If you can make money, don't forget about moral integrity. Besides, it's the duty of a gamer to dedicate interesting games to players instead of teaching them how to play games, isn't it?" Qianyu was silent for a while, but finally chose to agree. After Ichiri Takagi returned to the company that day, the company immediately began to announce that the new paid DLC has caught up with the daily routine in order to give back to the players. "Mr. Takagi, the founder of Faishi Entertainment today, passed 5 levels and defeated 6 generals, and finally in the animation studio I'm holding the famous director Asahi Kazuma, who has recently become famous, and I'm begging for one R18 level book. There are rumors in the industry that the famous supervisor Asahi Kazuma fiercely refused, but Chairman Takagi sat in the office of the animation studio, brought his own tea, stayed up for several days, and tried various persuasion, and finally reluctantly allowed Supervisor Asahi to agree to be responsible for the art and copywriting. Another day passed, and new news came. Supervisor Asaba was extremely dissatisfied with the matters related to the soundtrack of Faishi Entertainment. Chairman Takagi had to fire several temporary workers and start a new soundtrack creation around the music production department of Animation Studio. The scene unfolds. The animation and game-related sectors have been very lively recently, and various news about Faishi Entertainment and Animation Studio have been buzzing. But there is no doubt that the comment section is now full of expectations and praise. After all, the last DLC Kyunulu, White Album has already broken the circle, and even the famous animation White Album was so popular that the disc sold well and various peripherals and licenses were collected. The bowl is full. Now that he is back again to direct the production of new DLC, veteran players are extremely relieved. With Supervisor Chianyu back, we don't have to worry about the problem of the main artist, and the sky is bright for Faishi Entertainment. The most important thing is that Chairman Takagi has promised that this DLC will be the most special content. Although there were related content in the main line and DLC before, most of them were just a taste. This time it's a bonus. More importantly, the main artist is Supervisor Chianyu. Fans can't even imagine how beautiful it will be when a famous painting director personally presides over this type of subject matter. But the fans' happiness was not over yet, as they immediately heard another new news. Animation Studio further extended the construction period and began to cooperate with several small outsourcing companies to launch 4 projects simultaneously. They are the new DLC animation of the same name Kyunulu, Fate no Sara, and the new projects My Sister Can't Be That Cute and Game Life, which were supervised and released by Asaba, and some of the content was outsourced. Animation Studio also announced that Lelich of the Rebellion, which is in charge of the veteran supervisor Daisuke Hiramaki, and K-On!, the Light Lily series K-On! In charge of the new supervisor, are officially on track. At the same time, Asaba Kazuma is preparatory to the Volleyball Boy project in preparation for the animation of The Prince of Tennis, as well as an animated film based on the worldview before the timeline of the Game of Life main series. Game Life, 0. So far, in April this year, Animation Studio will simultaneously release Kyunulu, Fate no Sara, limited to R18, Lelich of the Rebellion, K-On!, Volleyball Boy, My Sister is Impossible So Cute and Game Life 6 projects. This kind of output speed is terrifying in the eyes of the industry. It would be an insult to describe today's animation studio as being as productive as a cell. Now the industry and fans prefer to call the animation studio Zerg Brood. There is no way, the current animation studio is really talented. It can be said that if some companies with long-form animation series were not at the forefront, the animation studio would have almost reached its full production capacity. Some people question whether Animation Studio wants to make money and run away quickly, so it carries out so many projects simultaneously. Asaba Kazuma responded directly, it's not that he wants to carry out so many projects at the same time, but the Animation Studio has too many projects. If we don't do more, we can't keep up with the output of high-quality projects. If another supervisor had spoken like this, he would have been criticized by some netizens. But the person who spoke happened to be Asaba Kazuma, who is the most popular supervisor in the industry. It is said that even the music of the animation was composed by the supervisor himself. Although the supervisor would never mention these things publicly, the owner of the music copyright clearly bears Asaba Kazuma's name. Without specifically emphasizing this point, outsiders can only understand that Asaba Kazuma does not have much willingness in this regard. Asaba Kazuma is still too comprehensive, serious. Not to mention netizens, even my peers were heartbroken. Not really, as far as the quality of the previous projects produced by Animation Studio, if they were all of the same level, I'm afraid that if the world's attention is focused on them, other little Camilla companies will simply not be able to survive. Impossible, absolutely impossible. With so many outsourced projects, how can those outsourcing companies do a good job? There will definitely be a pile of shit. In the evening of that day, small companies that undertook some of the outsourcing work of animation studios expressed on social platforms. Animation Studio has completed the acquisition process of each company internally. Due to the complicated company change procedures, it was not announced to the public immediately before, so the production can only be shared out through outsourcing, but in essence it is still the work of Animation Studio. Now that the company merger process has basically been completed, we can give an explanation to fans who are looking forward to animation. Even if it is an outsourced work, fans should rest assured. Good guy, with this joint declaration, Asahi Kazuma really stopped being a human being. As for the companies that think outsourcing will collapse, damn it. Even if you put a knife on the neck of the original animators and threaten them to do worse, they will probably hesitate. Do you know under what circumstances can working as a worker best stimulate your work potential? When a college student with clear and stupid eyes first enters the company. When the leader is not making excuses, he is really preparing to give himself a promotion and a salary increase. When you hear that the company's business situation is in trouble and it is about to be merged with another company. The former means that there are still enough beautiful thoughts about the world. Both of them are painted in real terms, and the workers are happy and want to express themselves more. The latter. Then he is afraid that during the merger process, the superiors will think that he is too useless and prepare to fire him. I heard that Animation Studio has good benefits and the most important thing is that it has been very rich since last year. It is very rich. Colleagues at Little Kalimi Outsourcing Company have been craving for it for a long time. Under normal circumstances, if they want to join such a company directly, other companies may not accept them. Now, as long as they perform well during the company's merger and reorganization process, they can go in and tell me which worker who still wants to work in this industry will not work hard for his or her job. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love. Author, Fei Se Huasiang. Chapter 182. Under such circumstances, colleagues would not expect anything to go wrong in Animation Studio's production. With a last-ditch effort, perhaps an otherwise mediocre work will burst out with astonishing potential. It was under such circumstances that Amamiyamai finally made preliminary arrangements for the candidates to take action. Location, around the University of Tokyo, Asaba Kazuma's temporary residence. Qianyu Feng Jian yawned and woke up faintly. As soon as he went out, he saw Amamiya drinking tea leisurely at the dining table. Asaba Kazuma? What are you doing here? Kinya Kazuma's face darkened. This was the love nest between him and Shiina Kane, but why did an uninvited guest suddenly come over? The most important is. Asahi Kazuma looked at the extra breakfast on the dining table. How could she not know that it was Hien who let her in? Amamiyamai looked leisurely and at ease, and said indifferently, "Please, you run around everywhere every day. When you are busy, you can go to and from 4 or 5 places a day. I don't want to come here early in the morning to block you, and I don't know where he went." Asaba Kazuma pulled up a chair and sat down. He looked at her with a slightly disgusted look and said, "Don't you need to take care of Genji's company? It seems that Genji hasn't cancelled your management rights over the company yet, right? Although Genji will not let me step down immediately for the sake of face, I am afraid that marginalization is inevitable. When running a company, sometimes you do more and make more mistakes. At this time, you make less decisions. But it's not so easy for them to squeeze out of the fringe circle." At this moment, Hien came out with a stack of poached eggs, put them on the table, sat down and said, "The things you have done recently are really getting more and more dangerous. Are you really not afraid of Genji jumping over the wall? Genji is not easy to mess with." Amamiyamai was a little surprised and said, "Shiina senpai is calmer than I thought. If ordinary people heard that we wanted to take action against the consortium, they would have jumped off the hook a long time ago." Shiina Kane smiled. "It's not like she has never been in contact with the consortium, so she doesn't have such a great respect for them. Or, strictly speaking, the current family concept of the Genji group is not that serious. At least under the absolute binding of interests, it is not impossible for you to want them to compromise. The extreme pursuit of money in this era has caused an unprecedented impact on the inherent sense of honor of many families, especially the Genji family, which interrupted its inheritance and then picked it up again. What has maintained the existence of this family over the years is no longer some bullshit family honor. Money. 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 Or money. After all, is it because Amama Yamai has not been directly kicked out of Genji's ranks now because Genji really doesn't dare? Obviously not, it's just because they saw huge benefits in Amama Yamai, or in Asaba Kazuma and Amama Yamai who were hiding behind Amama Yamai. Even major powers from all over the world have extended olive branches to the two of them. You can imagine how amazing the interests hidden behind this are. Especially since Asaba Kazuma appointed Amama Yamai as her spokesperson, the taste is even more different. Within Genji, many people have already concluded that Amama Yamai and Asaba Kazuma have an unusual relationship. In modern times, there are also professionals. Someone in Genji has noticed that Amama Yamai has committed herself to someone else. Comparing the time, basically it can be determined that there is nothing clean between the two of them. Even if they were unhappy at this time and wanted to kick Genji out directly, they were worried that Amama Yamai would retaliate later and make Genji lose the opportunity to cooperate with Asaba Kazuma. Shiina Yuin had a forward-thinking perspective on this point, so he naturally saw it very clearly. But this unknown self-confidence still made Amama Yamai have some doubts. Forget it about Kinyu Kazuma, after all, this person is cheating quietly. Why is Shiina Kiin indifferent to this matter? The Shiina family's status is good, but compared to a consortium like the Origin family, it's still far behind, but she seems too indifferent. But that's fine too. Asaba Kazuma obviously had no intention of hiding this matter from Shiina Kiin. She was quite happy to communicate directly with this bastard. Including preparing various infiltration equipment in advance, we can start operations in 15 days. The equipment of the infiltrators will be directly connected to the monitor, and we can use them to remotely see the secrets of the Lao clan. Okay, call me when the time comes, and I'll leave it to you to arrange this matter. You're good enough to be the shopkeeper, Amama Yamai grunted, but still didn't refuse. For her, she can handle this kind of thing like a fish in water, but if Asaba Kazuma handles it, there may be some omissions. Although she knew this was reasonable, when Asaba Kazuma said this, she still subconsciously gave him a kick. If possible, she actually didn't want to come to this man when his two girlfriends were around. Although managing the company for a long time had made her a lot thicker-skinned, when she thought about having sex with that bastard, she even ran to next to my real girlfriend. That feeling is very embarrassing, don't you know? After chatting for a few more words and confirming the planned time, Amama Yamai left quietly. You are happy to take it easy and continue to deal with the company's related affairs. Now that you no longer go to be in high school, the school cannot provide you with more help. Instead, the curiosity and scrutiny among the students make you feel subtle discomfort. After eating breakfast, you said hello to Hien and went to the animation studio. Because Animation Studio's first episode of the season is finally coming out. Although it is not the main force, the first Game Life still made a good start with its excellent and interesting content. In the next 5 days, Animation Studio will produce Kyunyulu, Fate no Sara, Lelich of the Rebellion, K-On!, Volleyball Boy, I at the rate of one movie a day. The works of My Sister Can't Be That Cute were released one by one. There are Animation Studio works 7 days and 6 days a week, and this rare scene appears in front of everyone. The scene unfolds. Recently, the animation circle has been really bombarded. The first thing that attracted everyone's attention was not Lelich of the Rebellion, which Asaba Kazuma had great expectations for, but Kyunyulu, Fate no Sara, which obviously started out as mediocre and even good. It can only be said that you never know how much expectations LSPS can have for certain special scale animations. Especially when the animation was broadcast, the exquisite paintings that far exceeded the original time and space quickly caused an uproar among everyone. To put it in perspective, Kyunulu, The Sky of Fate is a game-related animation. It's impossible that the animation has already been released, but the DLC hasn't been released yet, right? Therefore, on the first day that The Sky of Fate was broadcast on the late-night channel of the TV station, it caused an uproar among many viewers. 6. Is this the content that Chairman Takagi went to great lengths to find Supervisor Asaba? This is too plain. However, my sister is very suitable for PRPR. Hey, this is what a drama with a plot is like, and it's impossible for a pure drama to be on TV for you. Hey, have you noticed the price of the new official DLC of Kyunulu? It's 60% more expensive than before. They really dare to sell it? I know what's going on, so I just smile and say nothing. What's going on? Bro, can anyone tell me about this? I can only say that the animation of Kyunulu, The Sky of Destiny is relatively simple, but the DLC of Kyunulu, The Sky of Destiny was full of sincerity at that time. I didn't expect that the official could still be like this. It's a fun experience to follow. It's full. Damn it, it's all your fault for shouting for the Riddler to get out of Gotham City every day. Now there are Riddlers everywhere. Brother, don't panic. To put it simply, the content you can't see on the TV station is available in the DLC. As long as the animation is played to the corresponding episode, the DLC can add a patch so that you can see that episode. Complete content. Conscience, such a big conscience. It even offers a lot of benefits to game players. It is indeed a promotional video for Animation Studio. It is indeed a promotional video for Animation Studio. It is indeed a promotional video for Animation Studio. Ad 1. Am I the only one who has started to look forward to the release of the unabridged BD? What should I do? Why hasn't Animation Studio released the BD yet? Without the BD, I'm going to die. The book world cannot be without Supervisor Chienyu, just like the 3D area cannot be without Tifa. Reviving the glory of Raifu, Chienyu is duty-bound. Wait a minute, I'll open a browser. All I can say is that you don't need a browser. That makes sense. When I drive off the platform, we'll be here tonight. The scene was very lively, but few people could see it. Asahi Kazuma's face turned dark as he was paying close attention to the news. I knew I shouldn't believe Takagi Ichiri's deception. Asahi Kazuma's mentality collapsed. Nowadays, all platforms are full of LSPS who come here after enjoying the game. Qian Yufengjian, who always likes to read comments and distinguish people, suddenly has the illusion that the comment area is unclean. In the past, everyone in the comment area liked to call him the old thief, the warrior of love, or simply called him Supervisor Kinyu. Even if some of the words sounded a little malicious, the overall feeling was like a disguised compliment to him. But now, the situation has changed. I don't know who started it, saying "Teacher, you are really my great teacher," and then the comment area was densely packed with people saying "Great Teacher." He had a hunch that the title of Great Teacher would be just like the label of "Farewell My Concubine" was placed on a certain director's head. It would always be placed on his head. Regret. I shouldn't have had an idea. Fortunately, with the arrival of the second week, various planned works of the animation studio began to enter the main stage, and the news about the Great Teacher gradually subsided. Because the audience found that these works of animation studio seemed to be a little bit good-looking. As expected, the first one to come out was Lelich of the Rebellion, which aroused huge emotions at the beginning. Asaba Kazuma actually has high hopes for this series. No one can understand what Lelich of the Rebellion means better than him who followed it all the way back then. Let's put it this way, in the early years of the 21st century in the previous life, animation was considered by many parents to be something only children could watch. At that time, computers were not so popular, and the speed of information dissemination was not so fast. Nowadays, it was extremely rare for a large number of two-dimensional people to gather together and chat. Some people are afraid of being caught watching anime because people around them say that people who watch anime are childish. Some people are worried that no one will talk about the topic they mentioned, because the niche of the second dimension was far greater than what people in the future would imagine. Some people just don't think it's worth talking about. At that time, Asaba Kazuma was also one of these countless students. Until one day, he suddenly discovered that among the animations that were originally shunned by students, there were suddenly several animations that allowed many students to chat together. The first was the four major migrant worker comics. Later, such works appeared one after another in short comics. For example, take the Mecha Combat series Gundam Seed. No matter how the so-called senior Gundam Kshatriya fans ridicule the plot of Gundam Seed for being too ridiculous, the politics are too funny, and there is no way to hide it. The original decline of the Gundam project was precisely after Seed, and then ushered in a new peak. It can even be said that the largest blue ocean in China that year was created by Seed. Do you know what it means that girls can come and chat with you about the value of a giant robot? Another example is Lelich of the Rebellion. This famous story about the revenge of the prince, how many students were obsessed with it back then? At that time, most of the roadside stalls that printed pirated posters and sold them were movie posters or photos of female stars. But do you know how it feels when a stack of Lelich of the Rebellion posters suddenly appear among a group of female celebrities and athletes' posters? It was like seeing a ghost alive. Asaba Kazuma has always believed that true classic routines are not so easily outdated, and now, with the compact plot of Lelich of the Rebellion, this animation has officially ushered in overwhelming discussions. Even the remaining animations that are not so topical still have a large number of fans. It can only be said that for many anime fans, there is no conflict between liking one and liking many. Unless it's a sprint for hegemony, purely in terms of popularity, as long as your quality improves, you can always attract enough people's attention. But for Asaba Kazuma, he really doesn't have much energy to focus on it now. Because not long after, he received a call from Amama Yamai. Kazuma, our equipment is almost ready. We plan to start when? After receiving the news from Amama Yamai, Asaba Kazuma couldn't help but reveal a smile on her face. He had a hunch that the most important thing in this fallen line love simulation was to uncover Genji's secrets. Although Asaba Kazuma didn't believe that Japan, which seemed to be biased towards the real world, would really have some weird things coming out. You know, even if you adjust genes, it is still a product that can be explained by science. The gene equation itself is an in-depth understanding and study of regulating genes. So, what is it that the old head of the Genji clan is hiding? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Huasiang. Chapter 183. You have begun the invasion of the land of the old Genji clan. You and Amama Yamai hide in an unknown corner, remotely tracking the specific scene through the intruder's belt camera. There are some security guards hired by Genji in the old clan area, but it seems that because there has been no movement in this area for too long, the security guards are very lax. The people arranged by Amama Yamai are professional, and they quickly hacked into the old clan area, which is not a big one. This was once the place where the Genji clan lived for generations, but later as the Genji population grew, this place was gradually abandoned. The infiltrators quickly broke through the security blockade and entered the old house of the tribe. You have discovered documents from Genji's old era. You discovered the history of the Genji family. You have discovered a strange statue. There is a goddess enshrined in front of the statue, who seems to be the legendary Princess Kaguya. You found a hidden gap behind the statue, and found an old camera in the gap. You asked the infiltrators to collect it and take it away. You searched the remaining documents and found the diary of Minamoto Hideori. After preliminary inspection of the remaining miscellaneous items, no obvious traces were found. At this point, the infiltrators completed the preliminary work and quietly exited. It didn't take long before a lot of the information collected in this investigation was handed over to you. The scene unfolds. Asaba Kazuma looked at the content in front of him and thought for a moment, it seems that I didn't see anything mysterious. Isn't the person who sent the unknown email trying to trick us? Who knows whether it's a lie or not? But we have to figure out what that old guy Uenziudori wants to do, otherwise our life safety will not be guaranteed. Amamiyamai said calmly. Asaba Kazuma knew what she said made sense. In fact, he doesn't care what Minamoto Hidenori hides if it's not necessary. There are so many secrets in the world, is it possible that he still needs to understand every one of them? But now there is a problem. Minamoto Hidenori is likely to pose a threat to Amamiyamai, Asaba Kazuma, and even Rina Enderman. Because there is now countless evidence to prove that when Uenziudian was still the head of the family, he had already started the Son of God plan early. This plan was even before the experiment of Amamiyamai and Genzen was successful. Considering that Minamoto Hidenori had already shifted the general direction of Genji from the traditional Japanese industry to the biomedical industry long before the Plaza Accord was signed, he had a vague feeling that this decision might be directly related to the Shenzi project. Then here comes the problem. If the Shenzi project had started very early, Genji's understanding of genetic adjustment should be deeper than they thought. However, in the outside world, whether it is the research project of Professor Fujiki Tatsuo invested by Genji, or Genji Medical's understanding of the adjusted gene, it is seriously inconsistent with the relevant information hidden within Genji. Dr. Funakoshi Hayato once said in Rina's simulation that he had dealt with a total of 5 patients with the disease of adjusting gene awakening. Counting Rina, that's 6. 2 of the adjusters who were asked to be hidden by a certain force, Asaba Kazuma, through communication with Amamiyamai, have been able to confirm that they are Amamiyamai and Genma Genji who had the relevant information hidden by Genji back then. Another one is Funakoshi Hayato's daughter who died of illness. The remaining 3 people are Ryo Kawanishi, an active men's tennis player, and his 2 girlfriends Rina and Kane. And these are just the patients that Hayato Funakoshi has come into contact with alone. Asaba Kazuma got a piece of news from Amamiyamai, that is, the number of people awakened by natural adjusted genes is guaranteed to be 1 in a million. This is the result obtained by Genji Medical after years of collecting samples from all over the world. But the number of natural adjustment gene owners that Kinha Kazuma learned about here is really too many. This ratio is not quite right. So, Asahi Kazuma had another suspicion. Is it possible that the number of natural adjusters he knows is actually less than he thinks? If he didn't doubt it, forget it. As soon as he had doubts, he immediately turned his target to several other adjusters. The first person he investigated was Kawanishi Ryo. Kawanishi Ryo was an orphan before being adopted by his current parents. He investigated his parents again and soon discovered that the parents were actually staff members of a charity organization affiliated to the Genji Group. Because of the initiative of the charity organization and his own willingness to adopt a child, the young Kawanishi was adopted. Liang adopted him. Asaba Kazuma felt something was wrong, so he launched another investigation. It was okay if I didn't investigate, but I was shocked when I did. Rina's parents were once middle and high-level executives of Genji's companies. They enjoyed Genji's special benefits every year, allowing parents and children to go to Genji medical care facilities together and enjoy related benefits. By the time the investigation reached this point, his alarm bells were already ringing wildly. After further investigation on Heian, I discovered that after the Shiana couple got married in the early years, Mrs. Shiana could not get pregnant for a long time, and in the end she had no choice but to use the power of modern technology. It happened that at that time, IVF technology was gradually becoming more popular, and the Shiana family came up with the idea. At that time, the best IVF company in Japan was Genji Medical. It doesn't matter if we don't trace the origin, but once we trace the origin, Qian Yufengjian feels something is wrong. What on earth does the old head of the Genji family want to do? Once doubt takes root in your heart, it can never be removed. This is why as soon as the anonymous email came out and he had some clues, he directly targeted Minamoto Hideori. Only 1,000 days to be a thief, not 1,000 days to guard against thieves? Find out what he wants to do. If it really threatens the life safety of yourself and your loved ones, then I'm sorry. Regardless of whether you are the old head of the Genji family or not, if Amamiyamai doesn't take action, he will take action against him. I don't see anything special in the words left by the clan. Please read the notes of the old clan leader. Amamaya rubbed her dry eyes. Wait a minute, I'm watching. After Asaba Kazuma confirmed that the books he got back only recorded some of Genji's history, he finally turned his attention to Minamoto Hidenori's diary. This diary looks tattered at first glance and looks very historical. Asaba Kazuma flipped through it, and found that 1,000 years mainly recorded Minamoto Hideori's life as a wealthy young man in the past, as well as his subsequent escape after falling into despair. At that time, all parties seemed to think that Minamoto Hidenori was dead, and Minamoto Hidenori had obviously spent a period of wandering in the diary. He even stopped taking notes, or just wrote a few sentences casually. Asahi Kazuma kept reading down. As I was flipping through it, I suddenly found some strange content. In April 1980, I saw God in Fukushima who changed my perception. After seeing the sentence, Kinya Kazuma narrowed his eyes. He continued to read through it, and he never found anything related to God in the notebook, nor did he mention the relationship between Hatoyama and him. An interesting fact was brought up, that is, he was able to develop rapidly back then. On the one hand, he had his own means, and on the other hand, with the help of noble people, he opened up the relationship with America and shouldered part of the burden of industrial transfer. Later, at the end of 1984, he began to sell off a number of original Genji properties one after another, and even some of the properties he later brought up were also sold together, focusing solely on the field of biomedicine. In the words he wrote in his notebook, he was certain that the future 50 years from now will be an era of biomedical hegemony. That sworn gesture made Chien Yukazama narrow his eyes. Although the field of biomedicine has already had a development trend in the early years, it still has a long way to go before it can become the next new era recognized by many capital giants. What's more, it was 1984. Many people may not quite understand what this time point means, but Asaba Kazuma can be said to be one of the most professional people in this field, and soon a series of major events that happened during that time came to mind. In 1985, the first batch of genetically modified livestock was born. In 1988, the famous PCR technology appeared. In 1990, the International Human Genome Project, known as the Apollo Moon Landing Project in the field of life sciences, was officially launched. In 1996, the first textbook cloned sheep was born. 2 years later, a group of scientists killed Celera as soon as Rockwell components were released in America to compete with the International Human Genome Project. It can be said that since 1985, biological science has truly entered the eyes of the world's top leaders, and attracted the attention of the world at an alarming speed. But at this time point in 1984, Minamoto Hidenori so firmly believed that the field of biomedicine would be the focus of human competition in the next 50 years. Not to mention, biotechnology began to grow rapidly. It was still in the 21st century. The birth of another technology that profoundly affected the development direction of gene editing, CRISPR-Cas9, truly brought gene editing into the era of rampage. There is a difference of 30 years. How to put it, under normal circumstances, people cannot understand things outside their own cognition. The vigorous development of biological sciences was based on the collision of the world's most cutting-edge biological cutting-edge technologies at that time, which allowed people to observe interesting phenomena and make associations, allowing many top scientists to realize the unlimited potential of these technologies. The germ of vigorous promotion. This is also the reason why sometimes scientific holy places often appear repeatedly in only a few places. Because you are at the forefront, it is easier to recognize things beyond your understanding in the collision of capital and technology, and then it is easier to generate new inspirations and create new technologies. The owners of new technologies, across the sea, are often closely related to capital. When scientific workers begin to connect with various forces, they will naturally attract the attention of these forces, and based on their own knowledge and judgment, they will decide whether to further develop this technology. However, Japan back then. To be honest, they are too inferior in this field. Even their cutting-edge scientific workers are unable to make such a judgment, because they don't even have any results. How can they lobby the consortium controller UN Shinorai? He made the most correct judgment despite having no roots and no fate. This kind of operation that breaks through the limits of personal cognition illustrates a problem, that is, Minamoto Hideyori has determined from another field that biomedicine will be the highlight of the next era. A subtle thought came into his mind, but it expanded rapidly in an instant. In other words, Minamoto Hideyori, you already knew about the existence of the adjuster in 1984, and did you do your best to pave the way for the next era? Although there was not enough evidence to prove this, he still determined that this was probably the truth. Interesting, really interesting. Asaba Kazuma suddenly burst out laughing, attracting the attention of Miyamamaya. What's wrong? She whispered. I have some guesses about the goddess Kagaya mentioned by Minamoto Hideyori. What kind of existence is Kagaya in your eyes? You mean my knowledge of Kagaya's nature? Right. Probably, some kind of perfect thing that can only be obtained. Then the question is, in this era, based on your knowledge, what kind of existence do you think would be the perfect thing that can only be obtained? Amamaya thought for a moment, her expression changed subtly, and finally she became more and more serious, and her eyes became more and more shining. You mean, the adjuster? No, it's not enough. Let me tell you a little secret. People can use scientific means to control several or dozens of types of adjusted genes. Amamaya was silent for a moment and whispered, I have guessed it a long time ago, for example, you. Asahi Kazuma smiled. When dealing with smart people, it's just a no-brainer. Miyamamaya may not have reacted before, but the longer she is in contact with Asaba Kazuma, the clearer it should be that he has a high probability of absorbing other people's adjustment genes and converting them into his own adjustment genes. And this method is likely to be reproducible. Based on continued thinking in this field, she can easily come to the conclusion that for Minamoto Hideyori, the existence of Kagaya is closest to his understanding. Some kind of super life form that possesses multiple abilities and can reach heights beyond his comprehension in any field known to Gen Hideyori. Some kind of owner with multiple adjustment genes, and that existence may even be more powerful than me now, and even more incomprehensible, so that Minamoto Hideyori can only use the simplest 3 words Kagaya to sum him up. This matter was used as secret information by Minamoto Hideyori, and after being exchanged and confirmed with the Hatoyama family, it received full support from the Hatoyama family. In 1984, before the Plaza Agreement was about to be signed, Minamoto Hideyori probably realized that he could no longer use external forces to continue to expand Genji's foundation, so he directly set his target on Kagaya. Perhaps it was the Kagaya princess who told him about the existence of the adjustment gene. In short, he knew in advance that the adjuster would gradually spread in the world and have a huge impact. So his goal is very clear, to create a super life form that can be close to the Kagaya he understands. So the Shenzi project quietly kicked off, and a few years later, it affected your cheap father, Minamoto Zayashi. I am afraid that Hatoyama also has a contract with Genji and wants to share this project that represents the future of mankind, so your mother Tomoko Amamiya became a victim of the Shenzi plan. Ultimately, the impact of this incident continues to this day. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love. Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 184. After listening to Asaba Kazuma's explanation, Amamiya Mai fell silent for a while. Finally, he looked at Asaba Kazuma and said, in other words, he regards us as raw materials. For ordinary people, adjusting genes is equivalent to evolution. It seems that your old Genji family leader has some unrealistic ideas. Asahi Kazuma probably guessed it too. The old patriarch was afraid that he was suffering from the same disease as Tatsuo Fujiki, so after discovering the horror of genetic modification, he wanted to take control of this power. Unlike real gods, tweaking genes are tangible genomes that can be edited and exploited. In this way, Genji can be regarded as our enemy. Chien Kazuma's side, you can contact a good place for gun practice, arrange a more private place, and find a way to help me get a gun license. I don't want to die silently somewhere. Corner. Japan is not a country that bans guns, but ordinary people want to apply for firearms. Haha, this possibility is very low. It is better to reproduce the famous sword of cut. It is unknown who hands these firearms that have flowed into the private sector through reasonable and legal means. However, it is relatively easy for some people with social status to obtain firearms through reasonable and legal means. In the past, Asaba Kazuma didn't care so much about these things. After all, his current situation has not developed to the point where he needs his opponent to kill him. But again, when he faced Genji now, he had to make more preparations. Do you need me to make arrangements with the bodyguard? Okay, but don't stop practicing shooting. You practiced shooting under the arrangement of Amamiya Mai. You turned on the overclocking mode, and after testing more than a dozen rounds of bullets, you mastered the fixed precision shooting skills. One day later, you can already crush moving targets while moving at high speed. 2 days later, you have mastered the skill of predicting bullet ejection, and your combat effectiveness in confined spaces has significantly improved. Mai Amamiya did not return to the Minamoto clan. She can't guarantee what will happen to her in the UN clan. On this evening, you are going to attend a private reception. The main members of the reception are interviewers from all over the world. It is mainly a discussion meeting on various research and future development directions in the biological community in the past 2 years. After the reception, there will be related cooperation matters that need help from Amamiya Mai to discuss. Who would have thought that this help would make the whole night pass? The scene unfolds. In a luxury hotel, Asayu Kazuma woke up from the bed. He patted his head, put his palm to the side, and touched a slightly undulating body, like white jade. Amamiya Mai is hiding under the quilt. What is going on? Why is it like this? He finally remembered what happened yesterday. In recent times, animation studios' performance has become more and more prosperous, and more cash has been returned to the company. Seeing that his career development has reached a new level, he is in a good mood. It happens that he needs to attend an event today, so he asks Mai Amamiya to help him check it. Amamiya Mai has been exposed to many channels and has a strong understanding of some basic banquet etiquette and clothing matching. Since the person Asaba Kazuma needed to meet that night was a bit high level, Amamiya Mai did not agree with Asaba Kazuma's statement of just wear some formal clothes and decided to have someone carefully prepare a suit for him. Although it is too late, in the handmade suit channel, there are still some high-quality, top-notch handmade clothes that can fit perfectly with a little modification. Asaba Kazuma didn't bother her, so she went back and forth for several hours in a luxurious suite where she lived in Tokyo. After choosing an outfit that Amamiyamai felt had no problems, Amamiyamai was satisfied. After measuring Asahikazuma's body data, they asked them to go back to work as soon as possible. After all the hard work, Kinya didn't feel physically tired, just mentally tired. We promised that scientists don't have to worry too much about their appearance, Qian Yufengma complained. Amamiyamai asked him to sit down in front of the floor-length mirror, tied his tie, and then said seriously, "It doesn't matter whether you care or not. You are a rotten person. After all, you have a good skin. At least you have to make yourself the most dazzling, show your side to others." As she spoke, she tied Asahikazuma's tie, then nodded with satisfaction and said, "Just this tie, it suits your temperament better." Asahikazuma snorted and said, "No matter what I wear, it suits my temperament. After all, I am a handsome guy from Tokyo." Amamiyamai snorted and said, "Why, you don't like the tie I picked for you?" "No, I just think you've been a little weird lately," Kinya said with a serious face. "You are a bad woman with a lower bottom line than me. You seem to have changed your temper during this period. You are submissive. To be honest, quite unaccustomed to it, even a bit evil." With a bang, Amamiyamai kicked the stool leg. Before Asahikazuma could finish her words, she felt her body was shaken and she fell backwards. Fortunately, his physical fitness was so good that he adjusted his landing position almost instantly, turned over, and avoided the tragedy of falling to the ground. Looking up at Amamiyamai again, she had already angrily walked into the bathroom nearby. "You guys who don't have any eyesight, just dress up yourself." Asahikazuma stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling mirror and looked at herself in the mirror. With the tie tied on top, she looked a bit more adult-like. But when he saw the Windsor knot that was not tied so neatly, he sighed, "If you haven't helped anyone tie a Windsor knot before, don't force it," he muttered as he untied his tie and tied it neatly again. A tie is the essence of an adult man. The more upright it is, the more it shows that he is calm in other aspects. My Amamiya still needs to practice this technique. For it. Well, there is no need for this bad woman to practice. I really can't imagine what it would be like for her to meekly tie someone else's tie. Asahikazuma looked towards the bathroom. You can vaguely hear the sound of bathing coming from inside. Apparently Amamiyamai, who had spent the whole afternoon carefully choosing his appearance, was a little tired and was going to take a shower directly in the hotel. At this time, in the huge bathroom, Amamiyamai soaked half of her face in the bathtub with a somewhat embarrassed expression. Her mind was filled with the scene where Asahikazuma said submissively just now. Thinking of the scene just now, she became helpless and furious again. "Idiot, it's just because I owe you a favor, and I want to repay you a little more, but I'm really giving you face." She just didn't know why, but thinking about what he just said, she suddenly felt a little uncomfortable again. Am I so unreasonable? Amamiyamai thought for a moment, and finally nodded firmly. Sure enough, I'm not unreasonable at all. It's this guy who doesn't know how to respect girls at all. But the next moment, she couldn't help but think of something. She held her breath and dived directly into the bathtub. Amidst the sound of gurgling bubbles, the face of the girl in the water turned redder and redder. Maybe you just don't respect me. Thinking of this, she suddenly felt a little sad. As she was thinking about it, she was immersed in the huge bathtub and didn't even hear the bathroom door open. Suddenly, a pair of hands reached towards Amamiyamai's waist. Amamiyamai, who had been holding her breath with her eyes closed, panicked for a moment. She didn't close her mouth tightly and took a gulp of water in an instant. She started to struggle. Before she could stand up, a pair of strong hands fished her out of the large bathtub. Cough, 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 cough. There was an expression of discomfort on her face, and Jian Yufengjian patted her back again and again, asking her to spit out the sip of water she had swallowed. "Are you crazy? I'm just teasing you, and why don't you just die?" Qian Yufengjian looked at her in astonishment. Amamayamai was furious. "I was just holding my breath. If you hadn't suddenly grabbed me, I would have stood up immediately and wouldn't have choked on the water at all." Kinya Kazuma glanced at her inexplicably and said slowly, "Why are you so idle and holding your breath?" Amamayamai paused for a moment. The expression on her face became even more complicated. What could she say? Because I was hurt and unhappy by Asahi Kazuma's words, so I held my breath for a while and felt angry with myself? You might as well kill me. How could I be unhappy because of this rotten person? It was just that he deliberately made me feel bad. But before he could say a few more words, she screamed with water all over her body. Who let you in? It's not the first time I've seen it, is it? Does it have anything to do with whether it's the first time? Get out. Get out. If I hadn't noticed that you suddenly stopped moving, would I have barged in rashly? Kinya Kazuma sighed. Only then did Amamayamai notice that Asaba Kazuma had rushed directly into the bathtub fully clothed and was now soaked to the skin. For a moment, her emotions became a little complicated. Looks like he's not that bad of a scumbag. Asaba Kazuma seemed to notice that Amamayamai's will was wavering, and after a moment he said strangely, "I understand. Don't do anything messy next time. It's easy for people to misunderstand you." Perhaps it was because it took a long time to get out of the bathtub, and the bathroom door was opened by Asaba Kazuma, and a cool breeze blew by, making Amamayamai feel a little cold. She resisted her shyness and stood up, re-entering the bathtub, but her eyes were still fixed on Chianyu Kazuma's clothes that were soaked by the water. "Look what I'm doing, I have to change my clothes. I can't wear this set of clothes today. I'll see if I can order a courier service online and send a set of clothes over, or ask the hotel housekeeper to take the clothes to be washed and dried." Dry. Amamayamai was silent for a moment. Half of her face sank under the water, making a gurgling sound of bubbles. After a moment, she whispered, "Take off your clothes and throw them to the housekeeper for washing later." She leaned against the edge of the bathtub and slowly raised one of her legs. The hot water in the bathtub slowly slipped down her long legs. Qian Yufengjian couldn't help but think of King Zhou. She must have been in this posture when the fox demon Daji stretched out her jade legs to tease the tyrant in the wine pond and meat forest. Qian Yufengjian took a deep breath, not wanting to be a gentleman, but suddenly smiled and said, "Are you inviting me?" Amamayamai didn't say anything either. Amamaya's whole body is soft, only her mouth is hard enough. The corners of her mouth were slightly raised, showing a smile that seemed to be trying to scare people. "If you want to come over and lick my feet, I don't care." In the past, when her subordinates saw this smiling expression, their hearts began to tremble. But Asahi Kazuma was not her subordinate, so not only was she not frightened, she was even. "How do you say that word? Gangster excited punch? I really want to scare Kinha Kazuma away. What a wonderful Amamaya." Asahi Kazuma's main specialty is to treat all kinds of dissatisfaction. He blinked and showed a wolf-like smile on his face. "Excite me." And then, the silver grate on the tin head was smashed into pieces, and the bloody skirt was stained by wine. The moonlight outside the window is getting thicker, and Amamayamai's face gradually changes back and forth between rosy and pale. Perhaps she drank too little water when she went out today, and her lips look a little dry, and her voice also becomes dry due to lack of water. He became hoarse. Memory interruption. Asaba Kazuma finally remembered how many unspeakable things happened yesterday. He blinked and looked at the torn fabric on the floor and Amamayamai making cute sleeping sounds. He didn't want to say anything. Yesterday, the atmosphere was just right. Asahi Kazuma's depraved line mainly focuses on not being a gentleman. Naturally, this delicious snack was immediately boring. Perhaps it was because the snacks in this top hotel were so delicious. When he tasted them, he chewed them slowly. After a while, the snacks completely melted in his mouth. Qin Fengjian said speechlessly. My partner, if you want to be Daji, you must have Daji's skills. You're a little kid with such a tough mouth. Look at what time it is now and you can't even get up. As if she sensed some familiar aura, the tired-looking Miyamamaya moved slowly, like a well-behaved kitten, and nuzzled into Asaba Kazuma's arms. However, Asahi Kazuma felt that if he continued like this, he would not be able to finish his affairs today. A beautiful smile appeared on his face, and he suddenly picked up Miyamamaya, who was leaning on his arm, and leaned against him. Seeing Amamaya-Mai's brows furrowed, as if she was about to transform, Asaba Kazuma, who was very angry to get out of bed, whispered in a low voice. This presidential suite is really not well protected, so how could a little wildcat run in? Asahi Kazuma looked at the little wildcat lying on the bed, picked up the stick in his hand and swiped it directly. The next moment, the little wildcat shook its body as if it was frightened, raised its neck and let out a shrill meow. Not long after, Amamaya-Mai, who was awakened by the little wildcat, also woke up faintly and looked at Asaba Kazuma with angry eyes. Good morning, Amamaya-san. We've traveled through Tokyo, who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 185. Good morning, Amamaya-san, Asaba Kazuma said with a smile. The corner of Amamaya-Mai's mouth twitched. Why did it develop like this? Why does it feel like every time I provoke him, it will end up like this? She looked down. His face turned red and he spat again. Are you an animal? This early in the morning? Chien Kazuma snorted. Why is it so early in the morning? It will be noon in 1 hour. Amamaya-Mai took a breath. She has always had a very regular schedule. Unless she encounters any unexpected situations, she usually goes to bed early and gets up early. After all, the work intensity is really intense. But there was indeed an accident last night. She pursed her lips and cursed Kinyo Kazuma angrily in her heart again. Get out, Amamaya-Mai cursed in a low voice. It depends on whether you are willing to cooperate. Kinyo Kazuma scratched the little wildcat lying on the bed, and it reluctantly exposed its belly. After sucking the cat, he started to do serious things. After the preparation work was completed, the little wildcat seemed to be even wilder. It was not until Asaba Kazuma caught him into the room without strength, and after cleaning his hair, he came out and said to the even more tired Amamaya-Mai. The cat's hair has been cleaned up, and I'm going to go out. Are you sure that all the customizations are ready? The little wildcat was uneasily combing its wet fur, as if it felt that the facial cleanser left behind after washing it in the bathroom had not been rinsed thoroughly. It took a long time until the little wildcat had tidied itself up before Amamaya-Mai turned her attention away from it. After some arrangements, she quickly asked the relevant personnel to deliver the customized clothes. Standing in the room, several service staff from the customization shop came to the door, ready to help Kinha Kazuma complete the details of her outfit. Amamaya-Mai glanced at the female employee responsible for assisting with dressing. Her eyes almost popped out when she looked at Asaba Kazuma, and she cursed in her heart. Why does this person attract so much attention wherever he goes? Where did he come from, the reincarnation of a succubus? Asahi Kazuma didn't know what he was thinking, but he was really not used to outsiders helping him complete his outfit, so he inevitably had a slightly embarrassed expression on his face. You guys go out and wait for a while, then come in when I'm almost ready. Amamaya-Mai finally spoke. Obviously Asaba Kazuma was different from the one she was used to having female waiters assist her in styling her clothes. Her face looked awkward, so he simply asked them to go down first while she told him how to dress. Asahi Kazuma never knew how to deal with these things. In his previous life, he only wore an ordinary suit. He didn't quite understand custom-made clothing that was more connotative, low-key, but also more complicated to wear. In the words of Maya, many of the outfits cannot be worn casually, and they generally need to be matched with appropriate styles in fixed places. This involves a blind spot in Asaba Kazuma's thinking. In the past, he only wore a peaked lapel suit with the Albert watch chain given by Heian. He really didn't understand and didn't need a more in-depth matching. However, seeing Amamaya-mai's enthusiasm, he still reluctantly chose to agree. For some other outfits, even if Amamaya-mai has never taught others, she has seen what others look like wearing them and can guide Asaba Kazuma in matching them. But after putting it on, with only the tie left to tie, she suddenly hesitated again. What's wrong? There's still one last step left. Kinha Kazuma looked at Amamaya-mai. Strangers come to help him dress, and there will be physical contact from time to time. Of course he doesn't want to, but if it is Amamaya-mai, let's talk about it separately. After all, the chaotic relationship between the two has already done a lot of things that need to be done. I don't think much about this slight physical touch. However, seeing Amamaya-mai's expression gradually becoming a little shy and angry, Asaba Kazuma still restrained her playful spirit and said helplessly. Didn't I just tell you that you don't know how to hit the leader? He reached out and grabbed Amamaya-mai's hand, and taught her step by step how to tie her tie straight and straight. Originally, he just wanted to tell her how to tie a tie correctly, but he didn't expect that Amamaya-mai seemed to be taking it seriously. It wasn't until after the beating that she pushed him and said, "Okay, go to your meeting." Asaba Kazuma nodded, suddenly remembered something, and whispered, "This meeting lasts for a long time, and it will be stuck until the afternoon. You don't have to be in such a hurry to go over to negotiate, just have a good sleep before going over." Whose problem do you think the lack of sleep is due to? Amamaya-mai was helpless, but her heart felt warm. This guy has some conscience. However, he subconsciously touched his slightly bulging belly, with a trace of worry on his face. She always felt that she didn't wash the little wildcat's hair properly when she just washed it, and she didn't know if it would have any adverse effects. You went out to participate in this meeting. This conference for the biological community will be held secretly in various major scientific research countries. Only some experts in the industry will participate. The relevant personnel attending the conference will more or less have some new biological projects that need to be cooperated with all parties. As strong as you are, there is no corresponding technical support for some high-end biological instruments, so you need help from all parties. You need to communicate these things in advance, and then leave the specific implementation to Amamaya-mai to handle. Perhaps because you entered this industry earlier than any other simulation, you finally learned at this relatively secretive meeting that the matter of the adjusters had long attracted the attention of various countries. Countries clearly feel that the proportion of adjusters is gradually increasing in recent years. Although adjusters still occupy a very small base of human beings, many countries only regard adjusters as geniuses who can sustain development, but many countries are opposed to it attitude, believing that adjusters need to be strictly controlled. There was a lot of disturbance at the scene, but no progress was made, and suddenly someone pointed the finger at you. The scene unfolds. Asaba Kazuma calmly looked at the Japanese researcher in the biomedical field and said coldly, "So what do you want to express? Mr. Kinyu, you should also be an adjuster, otherwise there would be no reason for you to show such excellent qualities at this age. This can no longer be expressed by talent. Even genius is not enough to describe your development speed." Asaba Kazuma looked the researcher up and down. Perhaps because Asaba Kazuma's eyes were too cold, the researcher subconsciously turned his gaze away. Asaba Kazuma could probably guess that someone had arranged for this person to cause trouble at the scene in advance, just waiting to see his own joke. After all, this seminar appears to be a summary of the rapid development of the biomedical field in recent years, but in fact it is an advance plan for the future development of regulators. Obviously, Some of the major chess players on the world chessboard plan to let various countries take a stand in advance according to their own will. In this case, someone suddenly jumped out to identify himself and asked him to express his attitude. It can be said that he wanted to block Asaba Kazuma's way. If you follow the thinking of some chess players to explain your opinions, even if you are afraid that you will only be the dog of some chess players in the future, even if you are not careful, it will affect the future of the adjuster, and then affect yourself and your concerns. People's future. But if you put your own interests first, you will face another problem. If you stand entirely from the adjuster's standpoint, it will be more likely to cause problems. Because there are only a very small number of adjusters after all, and if they show a posture of protecting their own interests, it is easy for others to have another idea. You regulators are united now, only thinking about protecting your own interests without caring about the situation of the world. Will you be able to do it in the future when you become more powerful? Perhaps in the eyes of some people, this will put him in a situation where he is neither advancing nor retreating, and thus arouse the resentment of some of the 5 behemoths on this planet who really control the direction of global development. But since Asaba Kazuma already knew that he was going to be hostile to the old head of Genji, and even to be hostile to those partners of Genji, how could he let things develop like this? A bright smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he said loudly, "About this, I also have good news to share with you. I won't go into details about what was specifically said. In summary, it's basically just a few core contents. First, he and Hien have made the latest progress in their research. As expected, a gene-stabilizing reagent that can smoothly ensure that adjusters survive the awakening crisis will be officially released in a year. Second, the initial theoretical framework of the genetic equation is being constructed. As expected, in a few years, people will be able to match and adjust their own genes based on the genetic equation, and then inject drugs to stabilize their awakening, so that more people can enjoy it. Possibility of adjusting genes. Third, regarding his and Hien's related research, he hopes to cooperate with as many countries as possible, because this research is related to the future of all mankind, and it requires adjuster gene samples provided by countries around the world. Is it dangerous to go toe-to-toe with the old head of the Genji family? Asaba Kazuma directly threw the choice to the relevant forces from all over the world participating in the meeting. In this way, he did not need to worry about how to choose. Does Genji want to interfere? Let's first ask the countries around the world that have already attracted attention to agree. Not to mention anything else, the mere fact that ordinary people can be artificially induced to become adjusters is destined to break the most acute contradiction at this meeting, the contradiction between the ability gap between ordinary people and adjusters. Even for some countries that long for further development, this method that can crush the original class and leave their destiny to luck without further solidifying the country is their most ideal result. To put it mildly, after a certain cosmic country claimed to have developed room temperature superconducting materials in the previous life, although many people ridiculed the cosmic country's scientific research capabilities, there were also many people who expected this to be true. Because sometimes, after discovering new and further methods, the benefits that can be created are worldwide. Once room temperature superconducting materials can truly achieve a breakthrough, countries around the world will use this technology to move their countries into a new era faster. As for the slight damage to interests caused by this, it is a trivial matter. There is no obvious difference between Japan and the Universe Kingdom. If they can really take a crucial step in the field of adjusters, even if they share some of the benefits, so what? Big countries are confident that they can obtain greater benefits in other areas by relying on their development potential. Therefore, when Asaba Kazuma played this trump card, everything was actually settled. Before the meeting ended, some people were already eager to contact him. Asaba Kazuma did not refuse anyone who came, but said that he would wait until the meeting was over and continue to talk to all parties about the current situation in the side hall. As soon as the meeting ended, As expected, Asahi Kazuma was surrounded by a group of people. After a private technical exchange, all participating researchers who were not from the Brick family understood that Asahi Kazuma was not telling lies, and cooperation and invitations were sent to him like snowflakes. However, although Asahi Kazuma took over, he did not give a relevant reply. He just kept repeating, "I am really not good at specific cooperation matters, but my partner and agent Amamiyamai will contact you later." After the commotion, even Kinya Kazuma's physical attributes had reached the peak of ordinary people, and he also felt a little tired. He found a place to rest for a while, and suddenly frowned, feeling something was wrong. According to Amamiyamai's previous arrangements, she should have come to him by this time to complete the subsequent docking for him. But a while has passed, and he has not seen her figure. Kinya Kazuma's face turned cold. Of course he wouldn't think that Amamiyamai had killed him, fearing that an accident had happened. Asahi Kazuma made a call, but as expected, Amamiyamai didn't answer the call at all. He called the number of Amamiyamai's female bodyguard again, and sure enough, there was also chaos there because Amamiyamai was kidnapped again. Qian Yufengjian cursed secretly. As expected of Japan, the bodyguards are all drunkards, and that's right. The famous sword, upcut, couldn't be defended that time, let alone the others. He was basically certain that this matter was done by the Genji side. As for whether it was the entire Genji family or the group loyal to the old family master, he didn't know. His heart inevitably panicked. Suddenly, an unknown phone call came. "Asahi Kazuma, this should be our first official conversation." There was a voice from the other end of the phone that was obviously changed by a voice changer. Qian Yufazima squinted her eyes and her tone was a little harsh. "Who are you?" "Minamoto Hidenori." "No, do you still remember the email that I contacted you before and provided clues about the secrets of the Genji clan and Kagaya's secret talks?" Kinya Kazuma was thoughtful. "So it's you. Why are you contacting me now?" "I have some urgent matters." "Are you talking about the kidnapping of my Amamiya?" A burst of relaxed laughter came from the other end of the phone. Kinya Kazuma frowned. This person actually knew about this? "I can tell you who took her away and where you are going to rescue her, but I hope you can agree to one condition." "So what do you want to do? Sit on the mountain and watch the tiger fight?" "Miss Genzinzen," Kinha Kazuma said suddenly. There was sudden silence on the other end of the phone for half a second, and then a burst of laughter came. "Trouble, my acting skills are not up to par, and the suspicion is suddenly amplified." "So what are you going to do?" "Haha, what a strong man. Let me introduce you formally. I am Genzinzen. I am calling this time because I want to cooperate with you. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. We've traveled through Tokyo. Who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Huasiang. Chapter 186. Haha, what a strong man. Let me introduce you formally. I am Genzinzen. I am calling this time because I want to cooperate with you. Hearing a familiar voice coming from the other end of the phone, Qian Yufengjian showed a hint of understanding. What do you want to do? There was silence on the other end of the phone, and after a long time there was a sigh. I want to be free. Free. The freedom of life is not threatened. I am surprised that you can suppress Genji, so I don't mind helping you. After all, I am just a disabled person in a wheelchair, and I am not a great scientist like you. But there's no deterrent. Her words were calm and revealed a lot of information. Kinya Kazuma didn't think much about it. Tell me the location and how many people there are. Yuan Zhenxian sent him a location. Asahi Kazuma didn't ask where she came from. Minamoto's special talent seemed to have the ability to locate others and obtain surrounding information. In other words, as long as she wanted to, she could completely locate this talent on Minamoto Hideori. As for why she did this, Asaba Kazuma didn't want to know. I owe you a favor this time, so I'll hang up first. You looked at the location of the location, it was the land of Genji's old clan. You contacted the Metropolitan Police Department and some partners, and then drove towards the Lizu land. Soon you came to the outside of the Genji Lao clan's land and found that the Lao clan's land was under martial law today and there were wandering bodyguards everywhere. You decided. Enter directly from the main entrance in an open and honest manner. Put on the night clothes you secretly hid in the trunk and start sneaking, even if it's not late at night yet. Wait until foreign aid arrives to enter. Free simulation. The option seems to be much safer, but now that the Genji clan is under martial law, if you want to infiltrate quietly, it will be more likely to cause trouble. Who knows how many things the Genji has arranged in those corners where it is easy to sneak into. Option 3, he is worried that there is not enough time, and something will happen to Miyamamiya by then. Finally, Asahi Kazuma in the simulation space suddenly smiled. Since I have taken multiple routes, it means that every choice I make is actually not that correct, right? He chose option without hesitation. You chose to enter through the main entrance. Sensing your approach, the guards at the gate of the old Genji clan stopped you. After you get off the bus, tell the guard that you are here to find someone. The guard will reply that the Genji clan will not receive outsiders here today. You tell them with a smile that you have no intention of letting them meet you. You take action directly and decisively, and after a few breaths, the scene collapses. You notice that more and more people are approaching here. Unlike the guards who were knocked down by your sudden attack, they are already on guard. But there is an indescribable look in your eyes. The nature of simulation gives you the courage to move forward, but your confidence comes from something else. You have turned on overclocking mode. Your attribute points have increased significantly. Your physical strength changes, 10 rightward arrow 15 upward arrow. You have surpassed the limits of known human history and gained the temporary characteristics: strength to climb mountains, battle continuation, muscle control, tibia strengthening, and move like thunder /. We've traveled through Tokyo. Who still wants to simulate love? Author, Fei Se Hui-Xiang. Chapter 187. You received treatment and your injury improved. When the news came out that day, Rina and Kane hurried over and saw Miyamamiya, who was accompanying you, in bed. The scene unfolds. Asahi Kazuma was wrapped tightly, and it was difficult to move while lying on the hospital bed. This hospital was another public institution that had no cooperative relationship with Genji. Not long after he came out, Amamiya transferred him here. Because this matter caused such a big fuss, Asahi Kazuma is currently being treated conservatively in the hospital and will not approach outsiders easily. But not long after he came out, he received a call from the front desk to remind him that someone was coming to see him. The redness in Amamiya's eyes, which had been bandaged and sitting next to her, had not dissipated. She made a call and turned to look at Asaba Kazuma and said, "They are your two good sisters." Strictly speaking, they should call me good sister. Jian Yufengma bared her teeth, not wanting to let the two of them come in. If they see me like this, I'm afraid they will cry. At this time, the female doctor who had just come in to inspect Asaba Kazuma came in. After hearing his words, she said, "It turns out those two pretty girls at the door are here to see you." The doctor had just finished suturing Asaba Kazuma's wound. It seemed that he went out for a trip, and then met Rina and Yuin outside. As if to make him relax, she joked quite relaxedly, "Your health is better than expected. I guess the recovery speed after the operation will not be too slow. Don't worry, it's no big problem. It's okay to ask your sisters to come and see you. Just ask them to be careful not to touch your wounds." "All right." The two people in the ward looked at each other. The female doctor was confused for a moment, and suddenly she seemed to understand something. "Not sister. When Chienyu Kazuma was sent here before, the girl who had been accompanying him outside almost went crazy with anxiety. The doctor is also a doctor, so he can naturally see that the awkward relationship between the two people is a bit subtle, at least they are definitely not relatives. Even if they are not lovers, they must at least be, what do those young people say? More than friendship? Anyway, who would believe that the relationship is pure? Now that this handsome boy has just moved in, another group of people have come to see him. She naturally assumes that these are not related to this boy, right? But seeing this silent scene, are they relatives? Aha, so we're not relatives. They're all my girlfriends. Qian Yufengjian said calmly. The female doctor took a deep breath. Although he had already guessed from the silence between the two just now, he didn't expect that he would dare to say it directly. The female doctor could only smile. You have so many girls around you at such a young age, life is quite nourishing. Do you want me to ask the front desk not to let them in? After all, if you really want to come in and have a conflict, no one will stop you. With your current body. Just let them in, I won't hide anything from them. Doctor. Hiss. Are today's young people so powerful? Seeing the doctor's expression of wanting to eat melon, Asahi Kazuma rolled his eyes and reminded. Doctor, it's time to check. The implication is to drive people away. The female doctor shook her head. She couldn't have any fun anymore, so she could only check Kinha Kazuma. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, she was ready to leave. After going out, she poked her head out of the door and said, Sir, Japan is a monogamous society. I let the two girls at the front desk in. Asayu Kazuma rolled his eyes. This doctor talks a lot. Soon, the door opened. Uman rushed in, followed closely by Rina. Uman's eyes turned red as soon as he came in. Rina took one look, turned her head and walked towards the door. Seeing the red eyes of the two women, Qian Yufengjian suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. This was why he didn't want to let them in for a moment just now. Seeing Rina ready to go out, Asaba Kazuma said. Don't worry, your health is very good. You won't go to heaven in the next second. 10 days and a half of it will be enough. With overclocking mode in place, after a period of time, after the state has almost recovered, he will directly cheat. The physical recovery power brought by 15 points of stamina is far beyond that of ordinary people. After a dozen times, even this kind of penetrating injury can be cured to some extent. After hearing what Asaba Kazuma said, Rina struggled a little and walked in, while Hien was lying on the quilt, not letting Asaba Kazuma see her tears. Rina is the kind of girl who looks docile but is actually very decisive. If something happens to him, she will probably go with him soon. Under normal circumstances, Hien is actually a very fragile girl. A good family environment has given her a more sensitive heart. If it were normal circumstances, she would probably burst into tears. But she didn't. As Mrs. Kinyu, she had already shouldered many consequences. The dull atmosphere at the scene made Asahi Kazuma panic. He opened his mouth and said, Don't worry too much. As soon as he said the words, he realized that his voice was a little hoarse. Amamayamai stepped forward, took out a handkerchief from her bag, and gently wiped the tears of the silent Ishihara Rina. Ishihara Rina saw Amamayamai, who was still wrapped in bandages, and immediately shook her head, gently pushing her shoulders to sit on the chair next to her. Shianakane also raised her head, looked at Amamayamai, and said coldly, You should be thankful he's okay. Amamayamai opened her mouth, then lowered her head and said, I'm sorry, I caused him trouble. Ugenji has too many troubles, and I actually don't want him to get involved. But as his lover, at this time, no matter how heartbroken you are, you have to make a choice to support him. But I already regret it a little now. Amamayamai lowered her head and said again, I'm sorry. Shianakian's voice was a little calm. Will you still have so many troubles in the future? Amamayamai shook her head and said, I killed the old master who caused this trouble, and there won't be so many problems in the future. Seeing the tension in the scene, Kinya Kazuma waved his hand and motioned for them to sit down first, and then said, I wanted to deal with Genji before. It's not all her fault. That lunatic Minamoto Hidenori has endangered your safety and mine. I can't just let him go. But now that he has been dealt with, and the evil beasts hiding around us that we're watching eagerly have also been eliminated, we can feel at ease for a long time. As for this injury, don't worry too much. There are genes in my modified genes that can speed up my body's recovery. It's not as scary as you think, and I may not even leave any scars in the future. So, don't cry. Asaba Kazuma sighed in a low voice. He didn't expect that the most troublesome Shura field between Rina and Kian would be destroyed directly because of his injury this time. They are really good girls. At this time, their whole body is focused on the injured him. That's why it's even more impossible for you to leave. If you act like this, I will try my best to keep you by my side forever. Such a thought flashed through Kinya Kazuma's mind. Soon, perhaps because this incident was too big, Asaba Kazuma received many calls one after another. There is someone from the animation studio, where Daisuke Hiramaki is currently in charge of the overall situation. There was Ken Takano, the editor-in-chief of Asaba Kazuma from Weekly Shonen Jump, who asked him about his situation with concern. Ichiri Takagi of Faishi Entertainment comforted him and told him to take good care of his injuries and strive for success. Chihiro Ishijiro, who taught him painting, came to ask him if he had hurt his hand. Hayakawa Haruna asked him with a painful look what was going on and why such a big thing happened. Lily Garcia was muttering whether he was crazy for forcing his way into Genji's house, saying that he should talk to her about this kind of thing so that it would be easier for her to handle it. As they chatted, Asahi Kazuma also began to feel sleepy. Asaba Kazuma looked at Amamayamai and said, you should also lie down on the hospital bed and have a good rest. Don't fight with a gun for half an hour without being seriously injured, and then recuperate until the wound is torn. Amamayamai nodded, reached out and took out the fruit from the fruit basket she brought to visit the patient, ready to help him handle it before lying down. But Rina shook her head, pushed her to lie down on the bed next to her, and then took out the fruit from the fruit basket. Heian also walked up. Rina slowly peeled the apple, while Heian tore open a grapefruit, carefully peeled it and tore out the pulp. Amamayamai was lying next to her, looking at the two girls surrounding Asaba Kazuma. She felt complicated for a moment, and suddenly felt a little lonely. Soon, Rina peeled the apple and brought the cut apple to Asaba Kazuma's mouth. Eat. Asaba Kazuma took a bite happily, then turned his eyes to Amamayamai, who was looking at this place quietly, and said in a prelude. What, do you want to eat? Amamayamai rolled her eyes. Why is this man so petty? Sooner or later, I'll find an opportunity to punch him. Heian placed the grapefruit meat in front of Asahi Kazuma. Don't move around and have a good rest. You guys should eat some too, Chienu Kazuma said. Rina took out a new apple from the fruit basket, and Yuan continued to peel the grapefruit flesh, but did not put it in his mouth. Amamayamai felt a little tired today, so she squinted her eyes slightly, as if she was about to fall asleep. Suddenly, she heard a slight collision next to her ears. She instinctively became vigilant, and when she opened her eyes, she saw that Rina had placed a small plate in front of her bed. Inside are 4 petal apples and peeled grapefruit flesh. Eat. Rina tilted her head and said. Amamayamai was silent. Rina directly picked up the plate and gently placed it in front of Amamayamai. If it's not convenient, can I feed you? Amamayamai felt that her injuries were not serious enough to require help to eat a piece of fruit, or some inner thought made her reluctant to be fed by Rina, so she chose to reach for the tray and take it from inside. Start eating the fruit. Xianayuan, who had her back to Amamiyamai, snorted and then slowly ate the fruit. Asahikazuma looked at the scene and found it a bit funny. Rina's hit was a direct hit, leaving Amamiyamai helpless. As for Iman, she seems to be quite dissatisfied with Amamiyamai, but when Rina was about to send a fruit plate, didn't she put the peeled grapefruit meat on it? Seeing Amamiyamai biting the fruit one by one, the loneliness on her face was much lessened, and she suddenly felt relieved deep in her heart. Then he closed his eyes. After Genji made such a scene, he really felt a little tired. Fortunately, the situation has been dealt with, and he can finally feel a little more at ease. As for the Genji group, oh, let's see how we settle the account then. After all, Genji failed to suppress this change. The fact that you broke into Genji in a short period of time and penetrated the defense of the old Genji clan quickly made the news. Some people think you broke into a private house. Some people think that Genji should be held accountable first for forcibly kidnapping people. Some people were shocked when they saw the screaming guards being transported out of the Minamoto clan's territory in a steady stream. Some people are surprised by your extremely powerful close combat ability and call you the strongest assassin in the new century. Some people think that even the king of soldiers in the novel is unlikely to reach your level. I even got a short video clip of you sneaking in the old Genji clan from somewhere on the internet. In that clip, you were like lightning at dusk, moving through the crowd at lightning speed, and wherever you passed, relevant people fell to the ground. That is the sense of control displayed by pure power and speed, with an incomprehensible impact of power and beauty. Especially after seeing the speed at which the guards fell, everyone understood that this was not an accelerated video, it was very accurate to the scene. For a time, the terms false stealth and real stealth spread on the internet, creating a large number of famous memes in a short period of time. You didn't say much, you just silently liked the relevant comments and asked Fi-Shi Entertainment to release the recently prepared game promotional video. That is the game you have always wanted to create with Fi's Entertainment before you joined Fi's Entertainment. It's called Assassin's Creed //